Unwi grasped the hilt of his sword. This might be the first time he was using it since returning to this life. You should consider it an honor. This is the sword of one who bows to no heaven, who walks a path unafraid of the world. He recited the incantation aloud. The blade of defiance shatters the heavens. All laws crumble in its wake. A single strike pierces through the ages. Gods and demons vanish before it. Heaven-defying sword of desolation. And then, from his sword, an illusory force began to rise. It was a power that could never exist within the realm of twin radiance manifestation, impossible to perceive or comprehend. At least, that's how it appeared to Han Jianguang. What is this? Eyes wide, Han Jianguang stared at the force blooming from Unwi's blade. It was so blindingly brilliant, it felt like it could tear heaven and earth apart. Even in the realm of 5 Qi ascension, he had never seen anything like this. Overwhelmed by the absurdity of what was unfolding before him, he faltered, only to pull himself together almost instantly. Unwi hadn't been wrong. That sword carried too much, a path he'd never seen, an understanding he had never reached. Soon the air itself began to tremble. The wind stilled. The falling snow hung motionless in the sky. Desolation blade piercing the heavens. The moment Unwi's sword moved, a blade of light shot forward, straight and true. Han Jianguang saw it. A sword strike that not even his full internal energy and momentum could hope to block. It was something that surpassed the boundary of cultivation itself. He tried to raise his blade. Shhk, the sound was like the sky itself being torn open. And then silence. There was no spray of blood, no torn flesh. It was as if the world had been neatly sliced in half. Han Jianguang's upper body began to slide downward. The sword in his hands had split in two and clattered to the ground. The snowdrifts behind him were cleaved clean through, and the shattered cliffs from earlier bore deep, jagged sword marks, some split entirely in half. The very sword that once split the eternal snow mountains in Unwi's past life had now split a single life. Soon, the snow-white sword in Unwi's grasp turned to dust and scattered to the wind. The martial art was simply too vast for such a blade to contain. Blood poured from Unwi's lips, yet he did not fall. He walked forward steadily, silently toward Han Jianguang, who stood with eyes wide, still staring up at the sky. What did you see? A sword. No, something beyond a sword. Your end was not as pitiful as I imagined, but it still doesn't change what I have to do. I was prepared. I will erase Juryung's sword gate from this world. So it shall be. Han Jianguang glared at Unwi with bloodshot eyes, then bowed his head. He wasn't dead. Not yet, ... Could I ask you one favor? Not long ago you were calling me the next great demon, and now you ask for favors. How shameless. I know, but what else can I do? If my end wasn't too disgraceful in your eyes, if it didn't disgust you, then I ask you to spare at least one of my bloodline. Uprooting the bloodline is the usual rule. If you want me to break that rule, you'll have to offer something worth my while. ... In the cave where I secluded myself, there's a wall marked with crossed blades. If you dig behind it, you'll find an elixir. What kind of elixir? Empty, clear stone milk. Unwi's eyes gleamed with interest. Han Jianguang saw the change and asked, You must have obtained a drop when you killed Jiang Mui, didn't you? I did. I was the one who introduced that market. I secured some for myself before you did. How much? 6 drops. And how many remain? 4. 4 drops, Unwi murmured softly. If it's not there in that cave corner, do as you please. A warrior moves by debt and vengeance. Though an enemy, Han Jianguang had paid his debt with his life and offered a reward to block the cycle of revenge. If the elixir was real, degrees NOVELIGHT degrees, then Unwi could show some flexibility. If you add something else on top of that, I'll spare them all. At that, Han Jianguang desperately searched his mind. What did he have left to offer? It had to be something of real value, something that would tempt Xiao Unwi. And then, like a lightning flash across his memory, Chosui of the Hanbing sect, I made a deal with him. He promised to clean up after I killed you. In return, I gave him a share of the profits I made from selling the cold ridge jade essence I secured in Sialap. That money ended up flowing into the Hanbing sect. That, to Unwi right now, was the most important piece of information. Do you have a ledger? ... It should be in my quarters, but by now they may have moved it. I can't say for sure. I see, Chosui of the Hanbing sect, and the empty clear stone milk. Very well, I'll spare your bloodline. Thank you, cough, and... Even at death's door, there was one thing Han Jianguang absolutely had to know. That sword art, what is it? Unwi looked at him in silence for a moment, then spoke in a quiet voice. "It's called the heaven-defying sword of desolation. Heaven-defying. Yes, a sword art that contains my entire life. It's divided into 5 initial forms and 3 final ones. The technique you just witnessed was the first of the final 3. And the 5 initial forms, I call them the 5 songs of defiance. A sword that sings. I wish I could see them, but I know I never will." Unwi said no more. This was not a sword art to be shown lightly. Not a technique one revealed often. It was forged from the regrets, sorrow, rage, every joy and grief of his past life. All of it flowed into those songs. Unless truly necessary, he had no wish to draw them again. Han Jianguang coughed up blood. His body began to tremble violently. He tried to speak, but no words came. No matter how superhuman his focus, his final light had already faded. His eyes dimmed. His life slipped away. Unwi turned his body. He saw the stunned faces around him, their expressions blank with disbelief. "Prepare yourselves." "For what?" Xianxia asked. Unwi's answer was crisp and final. "We're going to Yangyong." A promise once made is a promise kept. A word once spoken is a word fulfilled. Today, Yangyong will fall. Unwi arrived in Yangyong. It wasn't like the times before, climbing over walls in the dead of night or sneaking through the shadows. This time, he walked in through the front gate. Behind him followed the warriors of the Snow Compression Branch and the swordsmen of the Iron Mountain Sword Sect, led by Xianxia. 40 in total. A small number, perhaps. But in Yangyong at this moment, it was an overwhelming force. The townspeople froze at the sight of them. Shocked, terrified. These were people who should not be here. Hadn't the elite of the 4 great sects already marched out to kill them? And then, only then, did the crowd notice what Unwi held in his hand. A severed head. There wasn't a soul in Yangyong who didn't recognize that face. It was the head of Han Jianguang, the gate master of Juryong Sword Gate. It meant one thing, annihilation. So then, what were these men planning now? Their curiosity drowned in fear, the townsfolk watched as Unwi spoke curtly. "Xianxia. Yes, you'll take the Iron Mountain warriors and head to Juryong Sword Gate. Just us?" "Yes. Just you, make sure no one escapes." Xianxia scratched his head, then gave a firm nod. "Understood." The Iron Mountain warriors peeled away, leaving only the Snow Compression Branch. "Follow me." Unwi walked forward, their destination. The gate of Jiang's Sword Gate. 2 guards stood at the entrance, just about to speak when Wanyang, standing beside Unwi, surged forward, her blade flashing twice. "SHHK? SHHK?" 2 heads dropped to the ground. Unwi strode forward like it was nothing and slammed his foot into the gate. The heavy wooden doors shattered apart, revealing the courtyard inside. Roughly 50 men and women stood within. Unwi stopped. His voice was calm and commanding. "Listen, yes, sir. What I'm about to do, you may find it distasteful. Some of you may not agree. But as I said at Snow-Cold Gorge, once a warrior begins something, he sees it through to the end." The air inside Jiang's Sword Gate turned heavy with dread. "Today you'll see that end with me." The warriors of the Snow Compression Branch hardened their expressions. 5 snows become frost. At Unwi's words, the branch warriors shouted in unison. 5 colds become ice. 5 snowflakes become a blizzard. 5 waves of cold become a glacier. Unwi gave one final command. "Erase them." "Sir," Jiang's Sword Gate was considered one of the stronger sects in Yangyong. They had no less than 10 warriors at the level of the 5 dragons of fortitude. 9 of them had died at Snow-Cold Gorge. 1 remained. He was Yon Segwang, the Smiling Blade. With fury in his eyes, he drew his sword. "You bastards, I'll avenge my gate master." He didn't finish the sentence. Unwi lunged forward like a bolt of light, closed the gap instantly, and grabbed Yon Segwang by the head. He didn't stop. He drove the man's skull into the stone pillar behind him, crack. A sickening sound. His head burst like rotten fruit. Unwi turned from the collapsing corpse. "Leave no kin alive." From his eyes poured a chilling, suffocating killing intent. "Kill them all." "Sir." Within half a quarter of an hour, Jiang's Sword Gate was no more. Their next target, Hyeonchan Palace. The phrase unstoppable as splitting bamboo had never been more fitting. This was it. The true meaning of overwhelming force. Within half a quarter, Jiang's Sword Gate was wiped out. Its halls burned. Half a quarter later, Hyeonchan Palace went up in flames. And another half quarter after that, Changgun's Sword Gate followed. The people of Yangyong cowered in terror. Screams echoed from every direction. Cries for mercy cut through the night like blades. Doors slammed shut. Families barricaded themselves inside and didn't dare emerge. Yangyong was bathed in blood. And watching this massacre with a faint sneer was one man, the magistrate of Yangyong, Jiang Mugi. "Well, shit, That's one crazy bastard. With his stern features twisted in disbelief, he listened as reports poured in. 3 of the 4 great sects, excluding only Juryung, had been destroyed, and at this rate even Juryung's sword gate wouldn't last much longer. Hey! At his call, a man in a black conical hat responded. Yes, magistrate, can you kill that lunatic? The man's face was devoid of emotion as he replied simply, yes, even though he's the heir of the everlasting Snow Palace. The sword does not see bloodlines. Before even stepping foot in Yangyong, Unwi had fought countless battles. There had been no time for rest. Every move was swift and decisive. Anyone with half a brain would understand what that meant. To lose to someone like that, only fools would fall so easily. The man in the black hat, Yu Dohi, chief enforcer of Yangyong, was a master of the 3-fire convergence realm. He wasn't the kind of person who should have been stationed in a backwater like this in the first place. But 4 years ago, he'd agreed to serve Magistrate Jiang Mugi for 5 years to repay a personal debt. He had 1 year left. Killing him would make things messy. I'd rather not go that far. So how about this instead? What do you mean, sir? Let's just subdue him. Even if it's symbolic, there's still a line between the court and the martial world. If we can end this madness by putting a leash on him, the everlasting Snow Palace won't dare ask us to clean up for free. And the higher-ups will owe us, probably even toss in a reward. Yeah, that feels right. What about the Hanbing sect? The Hanbing sect, huh? That Chosui guy, is he still with the government? No. He's already returned to the Hanbing sect. HMPH, we treated him well and this is how he repays us. No honor among martial artists, as always. Jiang Mugi turned around. Behind him stood Yu Dohi and more than 40 constables. Surely 40 armed men could handle 6 exhausted warriors. If this went well, he might even squeeze some gold out of the everlasting Snow Palace. Maybe even get promoted. He had no intention of dying as a minor official in this forgotten countryside. By the way, you said they're surrounding Juryung Sword Gate? Yes, sir. The only group from the martial world with any real strength in Sialap, the Iron Mountain Sword Sect, has them encircled. Iron Mountain? Never heard of them. No need to worry, sir. Their leader, Xianxia, joined Sialap 5 years ago and founded the sect himself. Ah, a fledgling sect only 5 years old? Yes, then not worth remembering still. How pathetic for Juryung Sword Gate. Yu Dohi said nothing. He agreed. Here in Yangyong, there were few Jiang Mugi himself wouldn't dare cross, but the former gate master of Juryung was one of them. A master in the 5-Chi Ascension realm, destined to reach the apex of martial cultivation. It had made sense to build ties. Jiang Mugi had protected and favored him, and in return received a cut of the profits from Cold Ridge Jade Essence. Very profitable, and now that very Juryung Sword Gate was surrounded by a 5-year-old newborn sect. What's the sect leader's level? 3-fire convergence realm. That's higher than I expected. But more importantly, how exactly did Han Jiangguang die? We sent scouts to investigate. One of the cliffs in Snow-Cold Gorge collapsed entirely. A collapsed cliff, with a weak foundation and last night's snowfall adding weight. Yes, sir. With an avalanche and rockfall like that, even a master in the 5-Chi Ascension realm wouldn't walk away unscathed. So the martial artists were wiped out, and by sheer luck, that bastard son and his men were on the far side of the gorge. It appears so. We can attribute it to extraordinary luck. Damn, even a scarecrow gets heaven's favor these days. He dismissed it. He assumed it was luck, nothing more. But truthfully, Jiang Mugi had gathered every constable in Yangyong and stationed them at the mountain pass for one reason only. Ah, speak of the devil! 6 figures appeared, bloodied grim. They'd have to pass through this road to reach Juryung Sword Gate, just as he'd expected. Jiang Mugi stepped forward and called out, "Halt, you violent thugs! This ends here." He tried to present himself with gravity and authority. It seemed to work. The man at the front, Unwi, stopped in his tracks. His expression was that of someone who just remembered something he'd meant to take care of. "You must be Magistrate Jiang Mugi of Yangyong." "Ho, so you know me?" "How could I not? You're someone I could never forget." There was weight behind his words. Jiang Mugi sensed it, but chose not to press. "I see you've annihilated 3 of the 4 great sects. Let that be enough." "Enough, you say? Is that an order?" "Well, if you insist, then yes. But take it as a request if you prefer. Refuse it, and more than half of you will die. Perhaps all of you except you will be slaughtered. So it's a threat. What else could it be? I am the magistrate. You are an outsider who attacked this province. This land belongs to the Empire of Yang. You entered unlawfully and took the lives of our citizens. Today, you shed even more blood. Your actions may well be seen as the everlasting snow palace launching a preemptive strike on the Empire. But I'm willing to let it go if you stop now. Leave one arm behind. One arm, that's all? Of course not. You'll also kneel and apologize. Do that, and I will generously bury this whole affair. He laughed, short, dry. So that's your offer, magistrate. Then allow me to make one of my own. Oh, you're quite the strange one. You're not really in a position to negotiate. But go on. I'll humor you. According to a certain ledger I recently obtained, you've taken precisely 2,000 silver taels and 300 pounds of cold ridge jade essence over the past 6 years. Ha! I have no idea what you're talking about. So you deny it, I see. Deny? This isn't denial, it's truth. I'm a government NOVL Cyrillic letter 456 HT. Don't copy, read here, official. I don't collude with the martial world. I merely govern. 2,000 silver, jade essence. If I had that, I'd have no more dreams left to chase. Now then, why don't you? I wasn't finished speaking. Xianxia's brows twisted in irritation. Beside him, Dohi unsheathed his blade. Unwi ignored them and continued. Return the full amount you took. If the jade essence is gone, convert it at current market value. Pay it back. Then leave this place. Everyone always seemed to get this part wrong. Unwi wasn't some mad dog. He had rules. He valued debt and revenge. He honored them, lived by them. That was what it meant to be a warrior. But debt and revenge weren't simple things. They could come from misunderstanding, from mistakes, from circumstances. That's why Unwi always offered a chance. A chance to repay what was owed. A chance to retreat. A chance to survive without betting your life. Every sect he destroyed had refused that chance. Xianxia would be no different. I already thought you were insane, but this confirms it. You're beyond saving. Accusing a magistrate of corruption? You little bastard, I've changed my mind. I'll take both of your arms and the heads of all your branch warriors. Chief Enforcer. At his call, Dohi raised his head. Go, take his arms. Take their lives. Yes, magistrate. Dohi stepped forward, and with him 40 constables surged into motion. They thought he wouldn't dare, that no matter how mad a martial artist became, they'd never lay hands on the court. They were wrong. Unwi wasn't a typical martial artist. Crush them. At Unwi's words, the 5 branch warriors immediately fell into formation. I'll take responsibility. Kill them all. Even for the branch warriors, raising blades against government forces was no small matter, but 3 of them didn't waver in the slightest. Chenpeng, Wanyang, and Han Murin. As Unwi drew his sword and clashed with Dohi, 3 constables' heads flew skyward in a crimson arc. Magistrate Xianxia's eyes went wide. Something was going wrong. And just as that thought crossed his mind, 3 more heads were severed and hurled into the air. The constables stumbled back, visibly shaken. Something was wrong. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. You dare attack officers of the court? Are you out of your damned minds? Drop your swords and surrender immediately. He bellowed at the top of his lungs, but it meant nothing. Unwi surged forward, slashing his sword with unflinching force. Chang. Dohi parried the strike with his own blade. Even in that fleeting moment, Dohi was rattled. The force behind that sword. It wasn't normal. Unwi stomped down. Crack. KHGGH? Dohi's right foot, which had stepped slightly ahead, was pulverized on impact. Gritting his teeth through the pain, Dohi swung his forehead down in a brutal headbutt. Whoosh! It struck nothing but air. An unnatural movement. He'd seen Unwi's foot touch the ground. But in the next instant, he vanished from view. SHHK? A sharp slicing sound followed, and blood sprayed from Dohi's right shoulder. Wincing, he reached out with his free left hand. His fingers caught the edge of Unwi's cloak. A chance. As a master in the 3-fire convergence realm, Dohi's instincts were sharp. He'd read Unwi's speed. All he had to do was catch him, and once caught, it was over. He slammed Unwi into the ground and raised a fist to smash his face in. But then thuck! A sickening noise like flesh pierced by a blade. Dohi froze mid-motion. Gook, a torrent of blood poured from his mouth. Kneeling now, he realized something was lodged in his neck. WN, did you? Rising to his feet, shoulder throbbing, Unwi answered simply. Just now. Impossible. A warrior is most vulnerable at one exact moment, when they believe their attack has succeeded. In that instant, they unknowingly open a perfect gap. Unwi never missed that moment. You calculated getting caught? This was Unwi's own version of sacrificing flesh to cut bone. He reached for the dagger embedded in Dohi's neck and twisted it. Shook, the neck severed cleanly. Unwi pulled the blade free from the corpse, turned, and hurled it forward without hesitation. Thud, G-A-H. The blade found its mark, Jiang Muge's thigh. The blinding pain overwhelmed his senses and he collapsed. For a normal man, that kind of shock was more than enough to drop him, and sure enough, "Ah, Og, you bastard, I'm a magistrate," Unwi walked forward, slowly. There was no trace of composure left in Jiang Muge's eyes. The so-called inviolability of court and martial world, it didn't matter who broke it first. What mattered was who would bear the consequences. That was what Unwi believed, and he had made his choice. Stop what you're trying to do, money. I'll give it to you. I'll give it, so please just stop for a moment. Let's talk a little. We've been talking all this time, haven't we? That's why. I said I'd give it to you, didn't I? Unwi stopped walking in front of Jiang Muge. You've made me waste my precious time, so the price has gone up a bit. Just say it, I'll give it. I'll give it to you. 2,000 nyang in silver has turned into 20,000 nyang in gold, and 300 June of Cold Ridge Jade essence has turned into 30,000. Jiang Muge gaped, mouth wide open at the sheer absurdity of it. My time is more precious than anything in this world. If something like money could buy it, I'd have already bought it. Magistrate, what will you do? That amount is unrealistic. How could I possibly? I take that to mean you won't pay. Who in the world would give you that? Speak like you're sane, you lunatic bastard. Then I have no choice. Since you won't pay, I'll take the rest of your time instead. He raised his sword. By taking his time, he didn't mean using him as a servant or anything like that. He meant he would simply kill him, and Jiang Muge clearly understood that. Wait, I am a magistrate of the Yang Empire. If you kill me, it's no different from declaring war against the Yang Empire. I'll handle the consequences. That kind of thing. Puck, Unwi's sword pierced Jiang Muge's heart. He pulled it right back out. Jiang Muge coughed up blood, SRRK, and Unwi took his head clean off. Everyone stared blankly at the magistrate's head soaring into the sky. No one thought he'd actually go that far. No, he killed a government official. It was as if time itself had read more on our source, stopped. Tita Lord, they all understood what it meant to kill a magistrate. Unwi surely understood it too, but surprisingly he didn't seem to care. He adjusted his grip on his sword and kicked off from the ground. SRRK. The head of a constable standing across from him flew into the air. In the blink of an eye, the constable beside him also lost his head. As Unwi spun his body and slashed, SRRK Gak, 3 heads hit the ground. Unwi had killed 5 constables in an instant, then spoke curtly. Kill them, all of them. Jin Soyop and Beek Myonggik were still hesitating, but the other 3 were not. Unyielding was the first to start swinging her sword, followed by Chenpeng and Han Murin. Exterminate and annihilate. This was an alleyway. Even if countless eyes in Yangyong were watching the situation, if they killed everyone here, at least for now, they could blind and deafen this part of the city. And so it didn't even take a full quarter of an hour for all the constables to be dead. Unwi shook the blood off his sword and spoke. Jin Soyop, Beek Myonggik. The 2 men lifted their heads at his voice. You don't want to do it? Ta Lord, there was just cause when we targeted the 4 great sects of Yangyong, but attacking the officials, that's something else. That was Jin Soyop's reply. I don't believe this is the right thing to do. And that was Beek Myonggik's answer. Unwi quietly looked at the 2 of them. After thinking for a moment, he gave a small nod. We'll need to have a longer talk, it seems. Once today's work is done, I'll arrange a time. Thank you. As he turned around, Unwi spoke. We're heading to Juryung Sword Gate. Follow me. And so Unwi's party headed toward Juryung Sword Gate. However, the one person not entering Juryung Sword Gate was Unwi himself. Was it Blue Dragon Rock where that empty clear stone milk or whatever was hidden? That's what Han Jiangwang said. That was a conversation between Chenpeng and Unyielding. Just as the 2 had said, Unwi was heading to Blue Dragon Rock to find the empty clear stone milk Han Jiangwang had promised. That's why only these 5 had come to Juryung Sword Gate. There, the warriors of Iron Mountain Sword Sect in Yangso were present. And at the center of it all were the disciples, warriors, and overseers of Juryung Sword Gate, all forced to kneel. Having lost their elite force at Snowcold Gorge, Juryung Sword Gate had fallen so far that they couldn't even fend off the Iron Mountain Sword Sect. It was a bitter reality, but what could be done? This was the martial world, after all. Han Murin grinned lazily and asked Unyielding, by the way, aren't you worried? Unyielding tilted her head at that. Worried me? We messed with the authorities. This is definitely going to blow up. No matter how thorough we are with the extermination, if the Yang Empire sends an investigation unit, it'll be the best of the best. Who knows? Unyielding thought for a moment at Han Murin's words, then answered firmly. I believe he'll take care of it somehow. Wow, you must really trust Ta Lord, huh? And you don't, Han Murin Nim? I trust him. But trust and faith aren't exactly the same, are they? That's all I meant, Han Murin. He was truly unreadable. When Unyielding revealed she was a woman, he just chuckled like he expected it. And when Unwi gave the order to kill, he moved without the slightest hesitation, on par with Unyielding. Earlier, Unyielding had killed the most constables, but that was only because she was in the twin radiance manifestation realm. If Han Murin were in that same realm, he would have killed even more than her. You know what? What do you mean? You change a lot once you pick up a sword. Han Murin smiled again. Whether it's that me or this me, it's all still me. Don't you think that's a problem? I don't, but you seem to. Then instead of me, maybe try doing something about those two over there. Han Murin pointed. There stood Jin Soyop and Baek Myonggik, and approaching them was Chenpeng. He hadn't said anything, but Chenpeng had been visibly irritated for a while now. Chenpeng spoke. Hey, you two out of your minds? Baek Myonggik, always the silent type, didn't respond, but Jin Soyop did. What did we do so wrong that you're this worked up? Wow, you little shits. You think this scar on my shoulder just appeared out of nowhere? That cut on Unyielding's calf, Han Murin's torn side, all of that happened because you two hesitated like dumbasses. You don't get that. Chenpeng was unusually serious now. While it wasn't a secret that he had his eye on the now vacant position of Branch Lord, this had nothing to do with that. This was a matter of basic trust. And yet, Jin Soyop only snorted. Seems like you really don't get who's the idiot here. Fighting the 4 major sects, killing all their disciples and warriors. Fine, that's the martial world, but the government? No. Touching the government means not only making enemies of them, it means making enemies of the entire martial world. You cowardly little fuck, aren't you? Maybe you don't know the difference between cowardice and intelligence. God damn. You son of a... As Chenpeng reached for his sword, someone grabbed his wrist. It was Unyielding. What now? Don't. What do you mean don't? Did you not see the attitude on these bastards? Guys like them need to be half-killed at least. Ta Lord knows. Unyielding turned her gaze toward Baek Myonggik and Jin Soyop. What was it that Unwi desired most? Absolute subordinates who would obey without question. While those two had taken part in the slaughter of the 4 great sects' warriors and disciples, when it came to the government officials, they hadn't killed a single constable. That wasn't a joke. They hadn't killed even one. They had only deflected swords or subdued them. The only ones who killed were Chenpeng, Unyielding, and Han Murin. From that moment, those two had already strayed far from Unwi's ideals. What more was there to say? This wasn't just branch business anymore. It had become Unwi's business, and Unwi knew. He knew that the wounds on the bodies of those 3 were because of those 2. Regardless of one's cultivation level, the 5 snow ice formation had to move as one. If even one person, no, in this case 2, began to hesitate, the damage would naturally fall on the other 3. That's why Unwi said he'd speak to them later. It would be inappropriate for Unyielding or Chenpeng to interfere here. And so Unyielding turned away, and Chenpeng, as if sulking, jerked his head to the side in irritation that didn't match his bulky frame. Only Han Murin, arms crossed in the distance, was smiling like he found the whole situation amusing. And before long, Unwi arrived. He immediately sensed the fracture between the 5 of them and voiced his impression with a single blunt comment. What a fucking mess. The World Commerce Association. They had played a central role in the distribution of Cold Ridge Jade essence. It wasn't possible to move forward with the story while leaving them out. After a brief moment of thought, Unwi spoke. Give them 10,000 nyang in silver. Excuse me? His agreement with Han Jianguang had only promised to spare their lives, but he could afford this level of grace. Give it. Yangso scratched his head and handed the money over to the Han family disciples of Juryung Sword Gate. And with that, they left the sect. Unwi spoke quietly. Set it on fire. As he had done after eradicating Jiang Sword Gate, Chang'an Sword Gate, and Hyuncheon Palace, he set each one ablaze. Juryung Sword Gate would be no different. He gestured to Jin Soyop and Baek Myonggik to follow him and moved to a corner near the wall. The 2, called out, quietly bowed their heads. Unwi looked at them for a while, then began to speak slowly. When I first accepted you, I told you to obey me without question. Do you remember? We do. And yet you didn't. We're sorry, he shook his head. I'm not asking for an apology. I'm asking you for your reasons. Jin Soyop took a deep breath and answered first. As a martial artist, I believe it's natural to repay grievances. But attacking the authorities is different. Different. To be blunt, touching the authorities means breaking the order of the martial world. I don't want to turn the officials into enemies. Because you used to be a soldier. At those words, Jin Soyop suddenly looked up. His eyes were trembling. How? Did you know? You can tell from the way you move. Unwi pointed at Jin Soyop's feet. Every 3 steps you put more pressure on your left foot. It's a habit of those who have spent long hours on horseback. And the angle you draw your sword from, the upward diagonal from the left waist, that's optimized for mounted combat. It's also the standard sword-drawing technique of the Yang Empire's cavalry. Silence fell. Jin Soyop's face had gone paler than ever. And Beek Myonggik. At my call, the corner of his eye twitched slightly. You still retain the breathing technique of the xianxia sect. How? Though the xianxia sect was annihilated hundreds of years ago, their breathing method is an ancient art that affects the natural flow of the heavens and earth. Every time you adjusted your breath, the air around you trembled slightly. Even if you only know a part of it, the fundamentals don't just vanish. And I can see traces of military training in you as well. Doesn't seem like the Yang Empire. Where was it? Walguk. Did you commit a crime? No, my ancestor from the Beek family was a first-generation disciple of the annihilated xianxia sect. The breathing technique he obtained back then still survives in our family. My father, who was a military officer, taught it to me. So that's why I see traces of both the Walguk infantry and xianxia in your style. Yes. Because you had a military father, you didn't want to make enemies of the officials. Is that right? Something like that. Unwi fell silent, lost in thought. Who is Sial Unwi? Judging from his actions so far, Jin Soyop and Beek Myonggik assumed there was a very high chance they would die today. Even so, they couldn't bring themselves to make enemies of the officials. That was their conviction. Faced with a conflict between that conviction and Unwi's command, the two of them had chosen conviction, and they were prepared to accept the consequences. The 2 men quietly closed their eyes, and then above their bowed heads, Unwi's voice rang out unexpectedly. Conviction is a strange thing. The 2 men didn't flinch. Unwi continued. Sometimes it weighs more than a mountain, other times less than a feather. You're probably feeling its weight right now. Jin Soyop and Beek Myonggik lowered their heads even further without a word. I too sacrificed many things for conviction. As a result, I ended up living every moment in the past, filled with regret. Whether it was right or wrong, I don't know. But what I do know is that I never want to repeat it. A note of sorrow was buried in Unwi's voice. I won't say your decision was wrong, but it's an undeniable fact that your choice put your comrades' lives in danger. A breeze passed by. The leaves beyond the wall rustled. After tonight, you are no longer members of Sialap branch. The shoulders of both men flinched. Unwi's words meant one thing. Jin Soyop raised his head. I thought you would kill us. A faint smile touched Unwi's lips. If it ended in death, it would be punishment, not a lesson. Beek Myonggik opened his eyes and looked at Unwi. I accepted you. I gave you martial arts, and I gave you a cultivation technique. Hanchial's martial skills are solid, and the heavenly image heart technique I created will be compatible with whatever inner method you study in the future. I won't take back a single thing. I won't demand payment either. Their mouths fell open. They had expected to at least lose their dantians. As I have my path, you have yours. No one knows where your road will lead, not even I. But Unwi's gaze turned sharp. If at the end of your road we meet again and it's not the same as mine, then we'll be enemies, so live with dignity. Hold on to your convictions. Understood. Jin Soyop and Beek Myonggik knelt at once and clasped their fists in salute. In their eyes was a mix of regret, gratitude, and resolve. We number N-O-V-Y-L-I-G-H-T number will never forget Ta Lord's teachings. Unwi said curtly, Unyielding. From not far off, Unyielding answered quickly. Yes, Ta Lord. You said 3 treasured swords were found in Juryung Sword Gate? Yes. Bring me all 3 of those swords. Unyielding flinched for a moment, then nodded. She quickly received the 3 treasured swords from Xianxia and ran over to Unwi. Unwi silently stared at the 3 swords for a while. Then he handed the one in the center to Unyielding and gave the remaining 2 to Jin Soyop and Beek Myonggik. The 2 men were nearly overwhelmed, unable to process the continuing generosity and grace. Where do you plan to go? To that question, Jin Soyop said he would return to serve in the government of the Yang Empire, while Beek Myonggik said he would return to his hometown. Unwi turned his back as he spoke. Go! The 2 men bowed deeply one last time and left. Even after they disappeared, Unwi stood there for a while, quietly staring at the wall. Only the moonlight fell silently, and someone approached him. It was Han Murin, I heard the entire conversation, unintentionally. So, you seem like the kind of lord who listens to his subordinates. And so what? May I speak my mind? Go ahead. Shouldn't they have been killed? At those words, Unwi gave a faint chuckle. Why are you afraid the martial arts will be leaked? Hanchial's martial techniques and the heavenly image heart technique, yes, they hold great value, but even if they are leaked, I'm not afraid of that. Then what are you worried about? I'm worried about the way it was handled. I don't trust those two. Whatever convictions they may claim to have, they caused harm to the comrades who stood beside them. If the 5 snow ice formation hadn't been so tightly linked, at least one of us 3 would have taken a serious wound. And that one would have been me with the lowest cultivation. Unwi listened quietly to Han Murin's words. To not punish people who committed such a crime is one thing, but to send them off with gifts, that I can't agree with. So it was a more layered concern than I thought. Yes. Then I'll give you a clear answer. Those 2 were my people. But those 2, and so are you? At those words, Han Murin stopped smiling and fell silent. It felt like his heart had just pounded loudly in his chest. I don't care if those 2 take the martial arts I taught and spread them elsewhere. The same goes for you, and for Unyielding and Chenpeng back there. Think back carefully. Did I ever tell any of you not to leak the martial arts? You didn't. You're all making a very big mistake right now. What kind of mistake? Martial arts are just tools. No matter what kind of tool it is, the person wielding it is what matters most. People are born first. Martial arts come after. I accepted you as my people, and I respect the convictions each of you hold. Unwi walked forward and stood in front of Han Murin. To accept someone means to accept everything about them. The reason I never asked about your past is because of that. Han Murin swallowed hard. Do you know my past? I do. How? I keep saying the same thing, but I'll make it clear for you. A person's movements reveal more than they think. This has nothing to do with cultivation. When someone breathes, eats, channels energy, or simply moves, traces are left behind. Some can read those traces and some can't, but at the very least I can. Then if I stay here, your enemies will increase. Your life will be at risk. I told you already. Even if heaven and earth are overturned, those who walk with me have no enemies. Unwi placed his hand on Han Murin's shoulder. I don't hold back people who want to leave. I'm not afraid of martial arts leaking either. Because to me, conviction is more important than some martial skill. And what kind of martial artist worries about getting hurt? If you had been seriously injured, it would have been my oversight and I would take responsibility. You understand what I'm saying? Han Murin looked at Unwi with trembling eyes. He didn't know what to say. His nerve, his scale was on another level. In the martial world, not all lives are equal. That's a basic truth. Unwi didn't stray far from that truth either. But he drew a clear line. The lives of his own people and the lives of others. He cherished the former fiercely and treated the latter like roadside garbage. Was he always this consistent, this absolute in his standards? Han Murin wasn't sure. Was this really the illegitimate son of Sialap? To the still silent Han Murin, Unwi spoke. Do not pursue Jin Soyop and Beek Myongik. Do not kill them. Is that an order? It is. A smile formed at the corner of Han Murin's lips. Understood. Unwi walked toward the cliff. It was a place from which all of Yangyong County could be seen at a glance. Flames rose from a few places, but despite that, the view was rather magnificent. Unyielding. Yes, tall lord. Plant the Xiaoyong flag. Tonight, Yangyong became the territory of the everlasting snow palace. Sialep and Yangyong. What happened in that remote backwater, barely even a proper town, reached the heart of everlasting snow palace almost instantly. When the number NOVYELIGHT number report came, Xiao Yongchen, the Lord of Ice and Heaven, showed a rare expression. A faint chuckle escaped his lips. For anyone else, that might not mean much. People laugh all the time, but this was Xiao Yongchen. A man known as a cold-blooded tyrant, he was not one to laugh, not even in mockery. That was why everyone in the palace's inner circle froze in shock. Especially Yang Xiaoljin, who had been delivering the report. He was visibly shaken. He'd always thought he understood Xiao Yongchen better than anyone, but something felt off. Had he been mistaken, it was then that Xiao Yongchen asked him a question. So all 4 major sects in Yangyong were annihilated? Yes, sir. A warrior settled a grudge with his own hands. Is that a problem? It would depend on who was watching. But by any measure, Hyun Xiaolin, Xiao Unwi, had taken Yangyong through just means. In fact, his justification had been sound from the very beginning. He'd lived as a puppet for 6 years, and now his revenge had been carried out flawlessly, but there was one complication. I'm told he also killed the magistrate. Still, Xiao Yongchen didn't seem bothered. If those so-called sects were extorting funds from Sialap, the magistrate must have been complicit. Isn't that right? Yes, sir, but there's no solid evidence. I heard there was a ledger. That ledger is in Xiaolan's possession. We haven't seen its contents. So you don't know? That's correct. Xiao fell silent, lost in thought. This was unexpected. He hadn't exactly been hoping for much. But this went far beyond his expectations. They had made a wager about the paths they'd walk, who would reach the end first. He never imagined it would be this path, a path balanced precariously between the way of demons and the way of tyrants, walking a tightrope between destruction and righteousness. But if you traced the chain of events, it became clear this wasn't something ordinary. First came the warning, sent via letter. Then a deadline, midnight. Before they could even formulate a response, Unwi had already infiltrated Yangyong and assassinated the leaders of all 4 sects. Then came the appearance of the master of Juryung Sword Gate, who had been in seclusion. That part was impressive, too. Naturally enraged, the master rallied every last martial artist of the 4 sects, and they too were wiped out. He collapsed a cliff. This wasn't a reckless gamble. He chose the most efficient path possible. And where was Unwi now? At the early stage of twin radiance manifestation. A martial artist at that realm, seeking the best outcome, would have done exactly what Unwi did. Then what if he reached the level of earth and heaven transcendence? He wouldn't just rely on raw strength, he would use his mind. There were now many who saw Unwi in a new light after this incident. Impressive. Again and again. Impressive. The execution was flawless. A martial artist of twin radiance manifestation had seized control of an entire county with fewer than 40 people. Even with government forces involved, he'd secured proper justification and sealed the matter with the ledger. Yang Xiaolin had said the ledger existed, but no one could confirm whether the magistrate's name was written inside. That's the thing. Depending on what Unwi decided, the name could be there, or it could not. Had he calculated that far ahead? Truly. It was astonishing. Finally, Xiao Yongchen's lips twitched, and then, ha! Ha 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 ha! A booming laugh burst forth so suddenly that everyone in the chamber went silent. Just moments ago, they had all been clamoring that Xiao Unwi should be summoned and scolded, that he should be held accountable, that this mess might destroy their alliance with the Yang Empire, and someone must take responsibility. Now those same people swallowed their words. Ha ha! It's entertaining, truly entertaining. And Xiao Yongchen meant it. Now you're finally acting like a true heir of the polar throne. The youngest had made a promise and kept it. Now it was time for the father to fulfill his own. Vice Palace Lord. Yes, my lord. That flower we spoke of, the Everfrost Flame Blossom, is it ready? Once again, every person nearby widened their eyes. The Everfrost Flame Blossom. That priceless spiritual creature, all of a sudden. I made a promise to Xiaolan, I intend to keep it. One shock followed another. It wasn't just the flower itself, but that he intended to give it to the youngest. My lord. You mustn't. The one who cried out was Jin Yangj, master of the Hanbing sect, one of Xiao Unwi's maternal bloodline clans. You mustn't. Why? That treasure, how can you give it to someone who's only reached twin radiance manifestation? More than that, he's committed a grievous offense. Xiao Yongchen cut him off coldly. His eyes were icy. I made a promise to Xiaolan. Now that it's been said aloud, there's something I'm curious about. Why, yes? No matter how lowly a child of a concubine Xiaolan may be, he is still the heir of the polar throne. Why then did those sects in Yangyong try to kill him? What exactly were they relying on? Jin Yangj, would you be satisfied if I launched a full investigation into this incident? And no, sir. Xiao Yongchen stared at him for a moment with an odd look, as if the whole situation fascinated him. Allow me to offer one piece of advice. I will listen carefully. Any grudge or feud within the palace, I do not intervene. That will not change. Do you understand? Yes, my lord. I understand. Truthfully, he didn't understand at all. What did that even mean? He doesn't interfere in personal feuds, so nothing's changed. Yang Xiaolin, sorting through documents with darkened eyes, didn't understand either. But both of them should have carved that warning deep into their hearts. Hyonshim. At Xiao Yongchen's command, a man leaning against a pillar at the corner of the chamber straightened his back and knelt on one knee. Yes, my lord. Go to Hyun Xiaolin. Tell him I've summoned him to the main palace. At once. And with that, Hyonshim's body vanished like smoke. By the time the catastrophe in Yangyong reached the main palace of Everlasting Snow Palace and began rippling through the martial world, there were already some who had begun to breathe sighs of relief. Those people were the World Commerce Association, Yangyong's dominant trading group. The four major sects had fallen. The magistrate was dead. But that was it. The cold ridge jade essence extracted from the two mines between Sialap and Yangyong had always passed through the World Commerce Association before reaching the market. That arrangement had been established through a simple agreement by Unyielding, the head of the association. Once the ores were extracted, they would all be sent to the association. The association would then transport and sell them throughout Zhongyuan. The resulting profits were split between the four sects and the magistrate according to prearranged percentages. As a result, the World Commerce Association became the only trading group in Yangyong. All others had been driven out. A complete monopoly. So when the sects collapsed and the magistrate was executed, Unyielding had trembled with fear. Would Sial Unwi's wrath reach them next? Would the World Commerce Association be left unscathed? It seemed unlikely, but strangely, even as the first day passed, nothing happened. And so they exhaled, we're in the clear. Even Sial Unwi must have some use for the association. With that conclusion, the future didn't seem hard to predict. Sial Unwi would visit them soon, most likely. Then they'd renegotiate terms. The association had sold Cold Ridge Jade Essence multiple times before. They were practically experts. A new deal would be struck. Business would resume. Unyielding's forecast was, to an extent, correct. At the very least, he was right about one thing. Sial Unwi would be paying them a visit. That much he got right. Unyielding was sipping tea on the top floor of a tower that overlooked the entire association headquarters, including the front gate, when he felt something. Off almost unconsciously, he glanced toward the main gate. Kraakom? The gate exploded. He jumped to his feet. The two guards stationed at the entrance were beheaded on the spot. And before anyone could react, a sword pierced the chest of Jin Janghyuk, better known as the Single Saber of the Horizon, a master hired from Zhongyuan. Something had gone terribly wrong. Boom. The doors were kicked open without hesitation. As the hinges shattered, Chenpeng and Wanyang rushed in, slicing through the two guards at the entrance with brutal efficiency. It all happened in a flash, far too fast for anyone to react. Footsteps followed, calm and unhurried. As they crossed the threshold, someone shouted from ahead, "You there, this is the World Commerce Association. How dare you launch a daylight? Who are you?" "You don't recognize me." "No, HMPH. I suppose it's not surprising, stuck out here in some Yangyong backwater. I am the Single Saber of the Horizon." "The what?" Han Murin leaned in and whispered to me. "He's a martial artist who gained some fame out west in Hwalryang, near the Yang Empire's border. Name's Jin Janghyuk. His cultivation is at the three-fire convergence stage. He fights with twin sabers. No one's sure where he originally trained, but he's affiliated with a group now." Didn't even need to guess. Stormwind Alliance. Ah, your insight is always impressive. Just from the way he walks, it's obvious he's trained in the Wind Beyond Dust step. Would have been weirder if I didn't know. Han Murin's eyes twitched hard. "So it's true, then, that you can read a man from his footwork alone?" I turned my head slightly. Stormwind Alliance. A rogue martial group founded by Zhang Chenriang, the so-called Wave King. It was often referred to as the Vagabond Union. Zhang Chenriang had reached the second realm of the martial gods, 5 paths, the realm of martial apex incarnation. There was a reason they called him the Wave King. He created the Wind Beyond Dust step, a technique taught to every martial artist who joined the alliance. For newcomers at the foundation stage, he offered the basic breathing step. For those at the flame convergence realm, he introduced the adaptive step. Once they reached the transcendence of earth and heaven, he passed down the dust step. And for those beyond, the profound step. The Wind Beyond Dust step was among the highest tier movement techniques in the heaven grade. It had been a pain to deal with in my previous life. Jin Janghyuk's footwork now alternated between feather-light steps like wind and weighty presses like storm clouds, yet with a deceptive softness, as if he were walking on air. On the surface, it might not seem like much, but there was a clear rhythm to it. Just from that, it was obvious. He was a rogue from the Stormwind Alliance. "I don't care that you're being paid for this job, but I'll say this once. Listen closely. You insolent bastard, do you have any idea who I am? Leave now. If you go, I won't chase you." "Ha, so the name of the Stormwind Alliance scares even you. Then allow me to offer you a deal instead. I'll take responsibility for the 2 dead guards. Just walk away now." I shook my head. This was enough. I drew the sword at my waist and stepped forward. Jin Janghyuk stared at me as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Even as I began to swing my sword, his expression didn't change. His legs braced, sliding him sideways across the ground. In that instant, his inner force exploded outward, and just as he tried to push off with his foot, thunk, my sword pierced straight through his heart. Wah! He collapsed with a heavy thud, his face frozen in bewilderment. Honestly, I couldn't blame him. There's a momentary opening in the second step of the adaptive step technique. As I mentioned earlier, Wind Beyond Dust Step is among the highest-tier footwork techniques even within the heaven grade. Created by a master of the martial gods' 5 realms, it could easily rival divine-level techniques in the right hands. But if that technique is used by someone in the 3-fire convergence stage, of course there will be flaws, and Zhang Qinriang, its creator, knew that. He patched most of them as best he could, but one critical gap remained. The second step. During the first step, internal energy gathers at the heel. In the second step, it shifts to the toes. That tiny instant where balance wavers, that's the opening. I withdrew my blade. Gah! As Jin Jianghyuk coughed up blood, I took his head clean off and turned around. Several armed guards and martial artists of the World Commerce Association stood frozen, watching me. "I'll count to 5, I said, casually flicking the blood from my sword. "If Unyielding, head of the World Commerce Association, isn't kneeling before me by then, every single one of you dies." I didn't even reach 3. Unyielding appeared and knelt before me. He must have been nearby. His first words were desperate. "I'm sorry. Sorry? Yes, I offer my full apology. Until now, the World Commerce Association has colluded with the 4 sects and the former magistrate of Yangyong Jiang Mugi to siphon Cold Ridge Jade essence from Xialap." I actually paused for a second. No lies, just the raw truth, spoken plainly. I wasn't used to that. Most people tried to worm their way out of blame. It was refreshing. I crouched down in front of him. "Didn't expect you to be so reasonable. I'm a merchant, and a merchant should always keep the door to negotiation open. Then this will be simple. You've committed a crime worthy of death. The 4 sects paid with their lives. So did Magistrate Jiang Mugi. The World Commerce Association won't be an exception. You're absolutely right, that's fair. So how do you plan to make amends? As a merchant, the only thing I can offer is money. I'll provide as much compensation as I can." "Compensation, huh? Normally I don't charge interest, but you know something? What is it?" "It's been 1 full day. 1 day since I took over Yangyong. And in that 1 day I stayed at the county office. The distance to your headquarters isn't that far, and yet not even a letter, not a single word. That was, so I came myself. But you know I'm not a man with time to waste. You made me spend it. That means you owe me. Any objection?" "None." "Good. I've had to kill hundreds just to finally meet someone who knows how to hold a proper conversation." Unyielding flinched. "But I meant every word. I've spoken to far too many people who couldn't understand a thing I said. Literally had to kill hundreds before someone with a functioning brain finally appeared. That in itself was a huge achievement. Listen carefully. From now on, Yangyong belongs to Everlasting Snow Palace. The old magistrate's office will become our Yangyong branch. I intend to keep the building, but its structure will change. The warehouse will be expanded. The training yard will be enlarged, and we'll build a new herb garden to supply cultivation resources. The World Commerce Association will handle all of that." "Understood. You have 1 day. By then I expect a full proposal prepared and delivered to me directly. Naturally, you'll bear all costs." "Yes, of course, it shall be done." Just applying pressure isn't enough. You need to offer an opportunity, too. The mining of Cold Ridge Jade essence will be shared between Xialap's Chenggun Trading Company and your association. Just remember one thing. If you pull anything, the World Commerce Association will vanish from existence. Understood? Yes. And one more thing. I leaned forward, whispering by his ear. Magistrate Jiang Mugi brought the 4 sects and your association together. He planned to storm Xialap and have me killed. I believe you hold the evidence of that meeting. Unyielding blinked. Evidence, you say? I wasn't even aware such a plan existed. If it did, I wasn't there. Really now? I thought you were a fast thinker, but you're slower than I expected. Let me repeat it. The meeting happened, you were there, so were the magistrate and the heads of the 4 sects. They all signed a joint pledge, entrusted to you for safekeeping. Now Unyielding's eyes began to tremble. He finally understood what I was implying. I'd like you to bring that pledge with you tomorrow. I'm sure you can forge handwriting well enough if necessary. He seemed to hesitate, but that was fine. It didn't matter if he hesitated. Given the current situation and what was coming next, he had no choice but to do what I wanted. I patted his shoulder. You're a merchant, so start calculating like one. Calculating? I have the ledger. and you represent the interests of the four sects and the magistrate. If we align our statements, just how much money could we extract from the Yang Empire? Xianxia took a deep breath. I have no intention of using political leverage, but if they start it, I'll respond in kind. If Everlasting Snow Palace and the Yang Empire go to war, who do you think wins? Figure out how much we can reasonably take, and bring that proposal with you tomorrow as well. Of course, your cut will be measured in pennies, not silver taels, but look at the big picture, be a merchant. Finally, a smile crept onto Xianxia's face. Don't worry. I'll make sure we both come out with the maximum possible profit. Good, I said, and it seems your World Commerce Association has a promising talent. We have several, but may I ask who you're referring to? There's a junior overseer named xianxia. Xianxia's brow twitched, just slightly, but enough to show he recognized the name. Give him a proper position and bring him with you tomorrow. I stood up. He would understand what this conversation truly meant. You'd have to if you were going to run a merchant guild of this scale. I was about to turn away when, Lord Xianxia. The voice came from an unexpected direction. It was right beside me. The moment people realized who had spoken, several gasped audibly. Some couldn't even raise their heads after seeing his face. They pressed their foreheads to the floor as if afraid to make eye contact. And rightly so, especially its commander, Xianxia. There was no need to explain his presence. It's been a while, Commander. Yes, but more importantly, you really went through with it. So I did. Xianxia studied me for a moment with a strange expression, then spoke curtly. The Palace Lord has summoned you. I smiled faintly. I see, I just have a few loose ends to tie up. I'll come after that. Shouldn't you go immediately? Neither I nor the Palace Lord would want that. While you're here, there are a few things I'd like to discuss. Shall we move somewhere quieter? Xianxia paused for a moment in thought, then gave a small nod. And so, he and I relocated to the Yangyong branch office. In a small office inside the Yangyong branch, I sat across from Xianxia with a table between us. Overseer Xiang brought us each a cup of tea, bowed, and exited without a word. Even after the door shut behind him, Xianxia remained silent. At last, he spoke in a quiet voice. You knew, I smiled faintly. Are you referring to the properties of the snowleaf tea in front of us or the true identity of our Overseer Xiang who just stepped out? I'm not quite sure which you mean. The latter. I've noticed this before. You have a particular talent for asking questions you already know the answer to. I don't have such a talent. It's just a strange habit that comes out whenever I speak to you. More importantly, how did you know? The White Snow Phantom Corps uses movement techniques so refined that even martial god-level experts can't track them. It's just a little trick of mine. Which is your polite way of saying you'd rather not explain. Precisely. Xianxia stared at me with unreadable eyes. I returned the gaze with my own expressionless stare. I still can't get used to this. You've changed far too much. Whether I've changed or not doesn't matter. The me back then and the me now, both are still me, Commander. I see. Then it must be that I failed to see your essence. No one saw it. Now, if I may, I have a question for you. I think I can guess what it is. May I speak first? Of course. Xianxia looked around the room, then lowered his voice. This is something I say only because you are the heir of the polar throne. You must not repeat this anywhere else. Understood. Very well. You once told me to keep an eye on the Phantom Corps. You said there was a traitor among us. I did. You were right. I've identified 5. That made my brow twitch. 5. That wasn't a large number, not out of over 150 members in the Corps. Number NOVYLIGHT number, honestly, it wasn't even worth discussing in hushed tones. Unless, of course, those 5 weren't ordinary soldiers. 3 of them are cold aura officers at the manifestation realm. The other 2 are from the 12 cold phantoms. I see. My calm reply clearly caught Xianxia off guard. You don't look surprised. I take it you already suspected. If Everlasting Snow Palace was breached, then naturally it must have been by someone from the White Snow Phantom Corps. If that traitor had been limited to a mere cold aura officer, it could have been prevented. It would have taken someone of the 12 cold phantoms caliber to fool not only the White Snow Phantom Corps, but also the intelligence network of the Phantom Corps itself. That much makes sense, but I wasn't expecting there to be 2 of them. Are you surprised because there were too many? He shook his head. No, I'm surprised there were so few. I expected at least 3, just 2. Are you sure you investigated properly? In my eyes, it's 2 members of the 12 cold phantoms and 3 cold aura officers. That's all. Nodding, Unwi asked, where were they from? Various places. 2 of the cold aura officers were with the Stormwind Alliance. One was from the Central Blood Sect. As for the 12 cold phantoms, one came from the Martial Alliance and the other, also from the Central Blood Sect. Unwi fell silent. You look surprised? He didn't deny it. He was surprised. He had anticipated the Central Blood Sect's involvement, but not infiltration by the Stormwind Alliance or Martial Alliance. I take it. You killed them all. I did. Did you get any useful intel out of them? I did extract something, but it wasn't of much value. Not useful. It's true that the 2 spies from the Central Blood Sect were responsible for luring the Venom Serpent Valley into Everlasting Snow Palace, but that's it, so they were merely waiting on standby. Is that what you're saying? That's right. Did you torture them? I did. I assume you didn't stop at just physical torture. Did you involve their families too? I did. Unwi fell silent again. This didn't make sense. It wasn't that he doubted xianxia, but if the torture had gone that far, they should have cracked. And if they hadn't, it could only mean one thing. They were truly just meant to lie in wait, which meant their real role was still to come. There is one minor detail. They seem to be looking for something. Looking for something? Yes. One of the 12 cold phantoms mentioned it with his dying breath. Said he was searching for the treasure of Snow Mountain. Not a treasure of the palace, but of the Snow Mountain itself. At that, Unwi's brow twitched. Who was looking? Xianxia of the Central Blood Sect. Xianxia. In the martial world, that name alone was enough to send shockwaves. Naturally, because while the strongest man in the Central Blood Sect was its cult leader, the one handling its real day-to-day operations was its vice leader. Vice leader Xianxia. He was the one who, some 40 years later, would break away from the sect and restore the Millennium Demon cult. After that, the vice leader's seat remained empty. The cult leader once offered that position to Unwi himself, but Unwi declined. After a moment of thought, Unwi spoke in a quiet voice. Who knows about this? As of now, only the Palace Lord, the Vice Palace Lord. And you, Lord xianxia. Who's the next to be informed? Lord xianxia. After that, word will be passed down in order to all polar descendants. And yet, the reason xianxia had informed xianxia first, skipping even the Palace Lord's heir, was obvious. He was the first one xianxia had ever told about the spies. Unwi rested his chin on his hand, deep in thought, and xianxia waited. At length, Unwi said, I see. More importantly, what are your plans for the vacant seats in the Phantom Corps? They'll be filled. Are you planning to promote internally? I am. Unwi gave a faint, ambiguous smile. There's one expert I'd like to recommend. He's reached the realm of enlightenment. That unexpected remark made xianxia blink. A recommendation, if you mean someone from the White Snow Phantom Corps. No. Then. An outsider? Yes. We can't accept an outsider into the Phantom Corps without thorough vetting. I understand. Have you heard of Sim Munryong? Sim Munryong. You mean the one they call the Lone Phoenix of Mount Hua? That's the one. xianxia ran a hand down his face. The title said it all. Sim Munryong was the last disciple of the annihilated Mount Hua sect. More precisely, he was the only surviving martial artist of this generation continuing the sect's legacy. His current level, Enlightenment Realm, more than enough to take a cold aura officer's seat in the Phantom Corps. Of course. That would be if he were to transfer allegiance to Everlasting Snow Palace. There was only one reason xianxia was hesitant. Isn't he infamous for being a mad dog? He is, for now. And even if we summoned him, do you think he'd come? Would you be willing to take him in? That question made xianxia falter slightly. Over the course of their conversation, he hadn't even realized it. At some point, he'd begun accepting Unwi's words without question. A year from today, to the date, a hidden realm will open in frozen White Gorge. It's the hidden realm of Chengmun. Chengmun, you mean? Plum Blossom No Sword. Yes, one of the 2 disciples of the Plum Blossom Sword God. If not for the Millennium Calamity, he was destined to reach supreme unity and lead Mount Hua. That Chengmun, may I ask where this intel came from? I saw it in a dream. xianxia was stunned into silence. Unwi continued without pause. The cold aura officers aren't strictly necessary for the Phantom Corps to function, but the 12 cold phantoms must be complete. Bring Sim Munryong into the Phantom Corps. I'll vouch for his talent. He's already in the realm of enlightenment, and he'll reach the celestial realm faster than anyone. In time, he'll be a true blessing to Everlasting Snow Palace. If the hidden realm doesn't appear, who knows what that lunatic might do? It will appear. And even if it didn't matter. Unwi had all of Mount Hua's techniques in his head. He could simply pass them on. I understand your concerns, Commander, but as I said before, I too want Everlasting Snow Palace to endure forever. xianxia looked at Unwi in silence. Unwi did not avoid his gaze. Understood. I'll meet Sim Munryong in person and decide then. Please do. As for returning to the palace, I'll depart once my business here is done. Then I hope you'll finish as soon as possible. I'll try. As Unwi rose to his feet, Hyunshim called out. Lord Hyun Seolin, Unwi turned. That offer I Novelight made to take you in as my disciple, it still stands. Unwi smiled gently. As I said then, I'll accept the sentiment. Nothing more? Though his words were firm, Hyunshim didn't look like he was giving up. It seemed he still planned to keep offering. And truthfully, how could he not? Even now, Unwi was like this. Who could say what he'd become in time? He was more than fit to be the next master of the Phantom Corps. Chapter 4, exactly 1 day had passed. Xianxia of the World Commerce Association brought a proposal for establishing a county office. I accepted without hesitation. He even brought a declaration of extension that he drafted himself. It wasn't just passable, it was practically flawless. He must have spent so long stuck in political gridlock with the heads of the 4 great sects and the local magistrate that he could now copy their handwriting to perfection. Even if I were to give him only 5% of what I planned to extract from the Yang Empire, he'd probably thank me on his knees. And in fact, he did. His way of reading the wind impressed me. In more ways than one, I liked him. I'd already decided he's more useful alive than dead. I intend to keep him at my side. And xianxia, the young man with the gentle face, smiled. Yes, my lord. Serve your master well. Help him accomplish what he desires. He offered a respectful fist and palm salute. Thank you. xianxia was clearly an unpolished gem. I had briefly considered bringing him into the palace to fill the vacant general administrator position. But he made his choice, to remain with the World Commerce Association. I don't force anyone to choose. I merely present the options. In his case, he'd already provided critical intel during my campaign to crush the 4 great sects. I owe him, and I pay my debts. Xianxia, watching us both in turn, gulped quietly. Then wisely, he excused himself and left with xianxia. If he had any sense, he'd have no choice but to assign xianxia to a major position. What happens from here is up to xianxia. After they left, I remained behind, glancing between the ledger and the declaration. Seong, the acting administrator, approached me and asked, Lord Unwi, what exactly is your plan here? You worry too much. Can you blame me? Yanyong is more important than you might think. To the west is Saryang, a coastal city. To the east is Jiakan. And to the south, Bangri. He didn't say it outright, but the truth was clear. All 3 were commandery-level cities. Bangri Commandery, Saryang Commandery, Jiakan Commandery, all of them ranked above a mere county like Yangyong. That meant bigger populations, more sects. And yet, each one had already been claimed by a major power. Bangri by the Martial Alliance, Jiakan by the Stormwind Alliance. Saryang was split in 2, half controlled by the Martial Alliance, half by the Stormwind Alliance. That was what Seong was worried about. Yangyong, tucked away in a backwater region and bordering everlasting snow palace territory, had always been avoided by major sects. That's why even a second-rate martial artist could act like a king here, but that wouldn't hold true for the surrounding commanderies. Administrator Seong. Yes, my lord. Let me tell you something interesting. What is it? That concern of yours, do you really think you're the only one who has it? Pardon? Bangri, Saryang, Jiakan. Each of them is already feeling cautious just from the fact that they border everlasting snow palace territory, and apparently the martial world has given me a new nickname. You mean Demon Lord of the Snow Mountain? At first, I didn't care, but after hearing it a few times, I've grown rather fond of it. Normally, a nickname with Lord in it is far too grand for someone like me, someone who's only just reached the nascent Qi realm. No, far too grand doesn't even cover it. It's absurd. But under certain rare circumstances, it becomes permissible. First, the fact that I carry the bloodline of everlasting Snow Palace directly. Second, when I do something so outrageous, no one can help but mock it, and it's that second one that matters most. The nickname Demon Lord of the Snow Mountain was clearly meant to be an insult. That's true. But why insult me? A smile crept across my lips. In just 1 day, every sect in Yangyong County, every constable, even the magistrate, wiped out. And all of it done by a bastard son who barely qualifies as a minor noble. Alone. Is that even possible? Seong looked completely dumbfounded. Of course, acting administrator Seong and everyone else who acted alongside me knows the truth, that I did it all alone. The others here in Yangyong may have heard the rumors, but do you think they'll really believe it? Logically speaking, This wasn't something a lone martial artist from a minor noble house could pull off. Han Jianguang, a sect leader of the four great sects, was a warrior at the peak of the fifth Qi Ascension realm. Beneath him stood countless elites, each one a master in their own right. And yet the outcome was clear. Everlasting Snow Palace had taken Yangyong. From an outsider's perspective, it could only mean one thing: Everlasting Snow Palace had intervened directly. As I said before, common sense exists for a reason. That's why the nickname was born, as mockery. A bastard son who couldn't achieve anything on his own, who needed the backing of the palace to accomplish anything at all. Thus, Demon Lord of the Snow Mountain. Right now, not just those three commanderies we mentioned, but even the imperial court of the Yang Empire. They all believe Everlasting Snow Palace intervened. I have no plans to lean on the power of any faction going forward. But they don't know that. In that kind of climate, they'd have to be insane to make a move on Yangyong, don't you agree? Well, yes, that makes sense, but aren't you even a little worried? Should I be? Gods. You said you don't want to rely on a faction's strength, didn't you? But what if they do go insane and come charging in? What else is there to do? I'll kill them all. Xiang stared at me, mouth agape. I don't enjoy killing people, you know. You don't? Of course not. For now, I intend to focus solely on absorbing Yangyong fully. During that time, Bongri, Saryang, and Jiakan won't dare get involved. At most, they'll try some minor interference, such as blocking trade routes, wiping out merchant convoys. Nothing else really comes to mind. And that qualifies as minor. That sounds more like picking a fight. I looked at Xiang in silence. Forgive me if I'm a little unclear, but isn't there a gold mine in Bongri Commandery? He flinched and gave no answer. I asked you a question. Is there or isn't there? There is, a massive one. And where is it located? Between Yangyong and Bongri, though it's definitely closer to Bongri. I see, good to know. Why are you saying things like that? You're making me nervous. No need, I need to build up strength for a while anyway. That said, has there been no communication from the Yang Empire yet? By now they should have sent at least a messenger, if not a detachment. Well, you know how they say, speak of the devil. I turned my head. They were here, 5 riders bearing the banner of the Yang Empire. Yes, only 5. But the horses they rode weren't ordinary. I could tell from the sound of their hooves alone. They came to a halt in front of the county office courtyard. The man leading them dismounted and shouted, "An imperial decree from the Yang Empire?" I snorted. Xiang moved as if to bow, but I raised a hand to stop him. He had no reason to show courtesy to the so-called emperor of the Yang Empire. Xiang was to bow to the palace lord of Everlasting Snow Palace, and no one else. That went for anyone under my command. I glanced toward the snow compression branch members nearby and gave a subtle signal. If anyone bowed, I'd sever their head on the spot. I turned to face the imperial envoys. Their uniforms were ornate. Each one bore the imperial crest on their chest. The flag was the same. For the unforgivable crime of savagely killing Magistrate Jiang Mugi and wiping out the county's officers, Everlasting Snow Palace is hereby condemned. By the decree of the emperor. That's enough. I've heard all I care to. What did you say? Do I look like a subject of the Yang Empire to you? The envoy fell silent, stunned. Yang Noryong is your emperor, he is not mine. I rose from my seat. You sent envoys instead of soldiers. That suggests you're open to negotiation, but based on what I've just heard, you have no idea what's actually happening. Explain yourself. If my ears aren't failing me, you just said your magistrate was innocent, didn't you? That's correct. Then the Yang Empire truly is filled with idiots. You bastard. What did you just say? The soldier beside the envoy bristled with rage, but the envoy grabbed him by the shoulder and pulled him back. He turned to me. If you have a point to make, speak clearly. I ignored him and held out a hand to the side. Unyielding, come here. At my call, Unyielding, who had been waiting at a distance, ran toward me. I handed her the ledger and the declaration I'd been holding. Give these to those fools. Unyielding flinched. She glanced at me as if to ask, are you sure? These are the originals. I smiled. Of course I was sure. If they had even half a brain, they wouldn't dare destroy them. And if they did, it would only strengthen our side's justification. After a brief pause, Unyielding stepped forward and handed the documents to the envoy. His brow furrowed as he read through them, and soon his face turned ashen. I gave him time to read them both twice. Then I spoke. The declaration is from 3 days ago, signed by the magistrate and leaders of the 4 great sects, pledging to assassinate me. The ledger contains a detailed list of bribes your innocent magistrate has accepted over time. It also proves he violated the peace between court and martial world from the start and actively conspired with the sects. Do you have anything to say now? Envoy Max Sohung found himself speechless for the first time in a long while. He had to be sure of one thing. To his eyes, the ledger and the declaration weren't copies. He wasn't an expert, so he couldn't say for certain, but there was no way a forgery could be crafted this flawlessly, or so Max Sohung believed. In short, they had the justification on their side. But you still massacred everyone, didn't you? That is clearly a crime. Unwi gave a short, humorless laugh and asked quietly, do you not understand what it means to violate the pact between the imperial court and the martial world? All that talk of tradition and decades of peace, forget it. When the court steps into the martial world, it's an unspoken agreement to resolve matters by martial world standards. And the reverse applies as well, I assume. I won't deny it, you're right. If the tables were turned, it would have been fine for them to handle it by imperial law. But did Magistrate Jiang Mugi ever have that choice? The martial world does not argue with words. He paid with his life. I have no regrets about that, but can the same be said of you? Unwi stood. Max Sohung silently watched him approach, each step deliberate as he closed the distance between them. There's no point in dragging this out, you're just a messenger, so let's keep it simple. I will give you 2 demands. If either is rejected, the Yang Empire's ruling family will be replaced. His hand clenched slightly. This bastard. Do you understand the weight of what you're saying right now? Of course. Why, you think I won't follow through? He couldn't answer right away. If it were just Xiao Unwi alone, of course he wouldn't be able to. The Yang Empire was vast. It was home to countless masters who had reached the 5 divine peaks of martial god path. But Xiao Unwi's backing wasn't just anyone. He came from everlasting Snow Palace. Max Sohung swallowed hard. Unwi continued in a calm voice. Listen closely. First, from this moment on, Yangyong belongs to everlasting Snow Palace. It is no longer Yang Empire territory. Withdraw all military camps in the surrounding areas. Second, reparations. Every coin you've stolen from me, every injury my people have suffered, myself included, must be accounted for. The man responsible is dead, but the damage remains. That must be settled. The compensation I demand is exactly 10,000 nyang of gold. The numbers he'd thrown at the 4 great sects before were exaggerated and unrealistic. But this wasn't. This was a demand made to a nation. It was entirely reasonable and payable. But to the envoy standing there, it was anything but. He stared at Unwi in disbelief. Are you saying that seriously? A cold smile twisted across Unwi's lips. It seems you don't quite grasp reality. Shall I clarify it for you? Would nailing your severed head to the imperial banner in the capital help get my message across? Max Sohung swallowed again, this time visibly, as Unwi gripped his shoulder tightly. I don't know who you'll deliver my words to, but if you could, please give them to someone who actually understands. I consider Yangyong to be sufficient, but if even one of my demands is ignored, I will destroy and tear apart every inch of Yang Empire territory surrounding this region. Are you serious? Do I look like I'm joking? If you don't want everything razed to the ground, then accept my terms. And if you won't, then I'll make you. Very well, I'll report it as such. Please do. And with that, the envoy left. Max Sohung headed for the Ministry of Heaven and Earth. He had no other choice. Only the provincial governor of the Ministry of Heaven and Earth had the authority to respond swiftly to a crisis of this scale, like the assassination of a magistrate. Song Hak, the provincial governor of the Ministry of Heaven and Earth. He held Noveligt, all the power now. Song Hak carefully reviewed the documents Max Sohung had brought with him. 2 demands, 10,000 nyang in reparations, and the withdrawal of all military camps surrounding Yangyong. Well, it's been a long time since I've seen someone this competent. Max Sohung blinked in confusion. Competent? That madman. Lord Governor, the documents are clearly authentic. But after insulting the Yang Empire to its face, wouldn't it be better if we just burn them here and now? And after we burn them, then what? Pardon? Song Hak gently stroked his beard and spoke in a composed, deliberate tone. Whether they're originals or copies doesn't matter. This is the will of everlasting Snow Palace. If we tear this up, that alone will make it real, no matter what it was to begin with. To be precise, this move was 3 steps ahead. First, the magistrate struck first, so the justification is already theirs. Second, by handing this to an official envoy like you, they've formalized the incident, cornering us. Third, the demands are calculated, 10,000 nyang. That's far cheaper than a war. A faint smile curled his lips. The current imperial court has neither the funds nor the political will to wage a war, especially not against everlasting Snow Palace. They've been trying to avoid even friction, let alone conflict. And you think Everlasting Snow Palace doesn't know that? These humiliating terms may look like a provocation, but in truth, they're favorable for us too. Max Sohung looked confused. A benefit? What benefit? Reading his expression, Song Hak scoffed with an exasperated look. Don't you get it? Pulling back our troops may look like a loss on the surface, but in truth, it means we're being removed from the power struggle brewing between the martial sects. That includes the thugs in Bongri and those crooks from the new Samgak who pay bribes instead of taxes. He set the documents down on the table with a quiet thud. Sial Unwi's fangs are already at their throats. Once we pull our military out, the area will fall squarely under martial world jurisdiction. And if Sial Unwi comes out on top in that fight, then ironically, we'll have gained an even easier man to deal with. But Lord Xianxia, 10,000 nyang. It's a lot, sure, but not more than we can spare. The amount of tax siphoned off in Jinggan province over 6 months is at least that much. Frankly, it sounds like he's inviting us to make a deal. Max Sohung fell silent. Song Hak narrowed his eyes slightly. So that's the kind of man Sial Unwi is? Calculating doesn't even begin to describe him. He turned and fixed his gaze on Max Sohung. Go back and tell him we accept all his terms. Every last one, and while you're at it, ask him this. What should degrees Novelight degrees, I ask? Ask him what he thinks about the gold mines between Yangyong and Bongri, about all the resources in that area. The gold mines. And the resources? Yes, and if he answers something like, I'll take practical profit over taxes, Song Hak's eyes flashed. Then my theory is correct. Sial Unwi had said this. Make sure this message reaches someone with a working brain. Be it the court, Xianxia, whoever, just someone who understands. Max Sohung blinked. What these two men even talking about? What kind of game are they playing with just one letter? A chill ran down his spine. He suddenly felt like one of the stones placed on a go board, and Song Hak said to him, Well, what are you waiting for? Go. Why, yes, right away. Max Sohung gathered the documents and hurried off. Left alone, Song Hak murmured with a strange smile. Sial Unwi, you really are a dangerous man. 2 days later, Max Sohung returned to Yangyong with a cart loaded with 10,000 nyang in gold. He also brought back the ledgers and written statement I had given him. When I asked why he hadn't burned them, he said, You're a vicious man. Me. Whether these are real or copies, the moment we tear them up, wouldn't they become the real deal? Not exactly. But I didn't bother saying it out loud. Because the moment they accepted them, whether scribbled trash or not, they already became official. Lord Xianxia of Jinggan province has taken full responsibility. Everything we discussed will be carried out. This incident was a failure of both the Yang Empire and Magistrate Jiang Mugi. So you're drawing a line. That's right, we're drawing the line now. I mean, come on, going to war with Xiaogung over one measly magistrate. Ridiculous. We could have negotiated the price down, but we didn't. And why is that? Consider it a gesture of goodwill. Goodwill, huh? The non-aggression pact between the court and the martial world still holds. We don't want to escalate this by awakening the northern giant, nor do we wish for bloodshed. Also, Lord Xianxia has a question he wants me to ask. Go ahead. He'd like to know what you think about the gold mines between Yangyong and Bongri and the surrounding resources. A smile tugged at my lips. I'd asked for someone who understands, and they actually sent one, so I gave the answer I'd planned from the start. I'll choose profit over taxes, but it will be on my terms in my time. Max Sohung's face lit up at first, then his brow furrowed at the second part. Not the answer you were hoping for. ... It's that second part that bothers me. Then take it as it is. There's no need to rush and no benefit to rushing. While conflict can break out at any moment, surely someone among them has the brains to make the right call. Tell Xianxia that. He'll probably smile when he hears it. Max Sohung thought it over, then gave a slow nod. You and Lord Xianxia, you're exhausting people, you know that. I've realized I'm just a small man in the grand scheme of things. I laughed. No one else sets your limits for you. Only you can do that. Max Sohung looked up sharply. If you believe you're small and insignificant, then you'll remain that way. But if you stop defining your limits and look beyond them, you might just stop being so small. Max Sohung looked like he was about to say something, then closed his mouth. He sighed deeply. Maybe so. At least in front of you and Lord Xianxia, I truly do feel small. I'll be going now. To those capable of true dialogue, my door is always open. Oh, and one more thing, I'd like to use some prisoners. Prisoners. There are 2 mines in Sialap. I want to increase output, but the weather's too harsh. No one's volunteering. That part, at least, was true. If you've got prisoners beyond saving, send them here. I'll pay generously. Max Sohung gave a dry chuckle and nodded. The envoys of the Yang Empire left Yangyong faster than they had arrived. And with that, Yangyong was officially designated as territory of the everlasting Snow Palace in writing. Now came the real work, actual governance. With a flick of my hand, 3 agents from the Snow Compression branch who had been training in the corner immediately stepped forward. There's no way you've been relaxing these last 3 days in Yangyong. Report what you've learned. Unyielding was the first to speak. With the destruction of the 4 clans that once ruled Yangyong, the city no longer has any dominant power. 5 groups have begun moving in to fill the void: Jade Tiger Gate, Blue Cloud Sect, the Yong family, the Shin family, and the World Commerce Association. At the mention of the last name, a familiar one, Sial Unwi chuckled faintly. The World Commerce Association. Yes, sir. Word spread like wildfire these past 4 days that you were backing them, and ever since they've been rapidly expanding their influence. Such as? Exactly 2 days ago, they forcefully acquired 2 blacksmiths, 2 apothecaries, 3 small merchant groups, and 5 inns. And just yesterday, they began construction on pavilions over the ruins of Hyeonchungung and Jang's Sword Gate's former lands. A laugh escaped my lips. What do you think? If you're asking my opinion, I'd say the World Commerce Association is crossing a line. Chenpeng and you? I agree completely. Han Murin, your thoughts? Han Murin was never one to speak much. Famously stoic, he gave his answer in a short sentence. Let them be. And why is that? If we leave them alone, the association will come to control more than half of Yangyong. And when that time comes, we can simply wipe out their merchant lord and his entire bloodline. Their power will naturally become yours. That went beyond cunning. It was cold-blooded brilliance. Unyielding and Chenpeng both blinked, unable to hide their shock. For a moment it was hard to tell whether Murin was a man or some devil in disguise. Surprisingly, I found myself intrigued. I like that idea. Unyielding and Chenpeng whipped their heads toward me in disbelief. Judging by their expressions, they were wondering if I was serious. I ignored them and continued speaking. I do like it, but for now we hold off. Han Murin, perhaps never meaning to propose it seriously, quietly stepped back without protest. Han Murin, yes, your method is efficient, I won't deny that. But the World Commerce Association is already under my command, so I'll give them one chance. Even if they cross a line, they may appear to cross the line by your standards, but by mine they haven't. Expanding their influence. An organization that plays both merchant and martial roles, of course they'd do that. If they hadn't, I'd be questioning their competence. But you're right, they deserve a warning. A chill touched my lips as a cold smile curled at their edge. No matter how loyal a subordinate may be, it's unacceptable for them to start thinking they own the land. The solution I laid out was simple. We'll hold a banquet tonight. A banquet? What's the largest winehouse in Yangyong? That would be Yangyong Hall. Yangyong Hall. Named after the region itself, the 6-story building was the grandest in the county. Its courtesans were said to be the finest in Yangyong, especially their talent in zither playing, which ranked top tier. People even came from other provinces to enjoy their company. Tonight, summon the heads of all major sects in Yangyong to Yangyong Hall. As you command. The 3 immediately rushed out, and once I was alone, Xiang, the steward, approached me. Sir, I turned to him. I just heard this from the Chamberlain. The palace is wondering when you intend to return. The process of swallowing Yangyong was still ongoing. It wasn't finished yet. To wrap things up would take at least another day or 2. Tell them I'll return in 2 days. 2 days, understood. As Xiang turned to leave, I asked, Don't you need more people? Xiang gave a faint smile. Unyielding stops by occasionally to help, so I'm still managing just fine. Though a martial artist by background, Xiang hadn't used force in years. Over a dozen years had passed since his last real battle. In that time, he'd been a housekeeper, a steward, a man of paperwork, not violence. His identity as a warrior had almost completely faded, and yet that was fine. For someone at the entry level of enlightenment, even without battle experience, he still had the strength to protect himself. If you ever want to return to active duty, just say the word. Xiang let out a laugh. I'm content with my work now, and judging by how things are unfolding, I doubt my martial strength is needed. It's not about strength. Xiang tilted his head. Not about strength. I don't want to see my people forced to do something they don't want to do. At that, Xiang visibly flinched, touched to his core. His eyes even glistened, as if on the verge of tears. To speak plainly, Chief Steward Xiang had once been a martial artist. He'd entered the everlasting snow palace to live as a martial artist. Novelght, trained and grew stronger there, but the post he was given was within the White Snow Phantom Corps, an entity devoted to preserving the palace's bloodline by concealing its identity thoroughly, utterly. It was not the path he had set out to walk, and yet no one ever told him that. Everyone just assumed it was the natural course of things. Not just the division leader, even Palace Lord Xianxia thought nothing of it. There was nothing left to say after that. This was the first time. The first time anyone had said something like this to him. "Why are you suddenly saying something touching like that? At this rate, I won't live long." Unwi silently looked at Xiang, whose eyes were already reddening, and then said quietly, "Recruit more stewards, and I'm planning to establish the position of protector." Protector? Starting today, you're my protector. The duties are simple: monitor the individuals I assign, and if necessary, assassinate them. You're seriously going to use me? Why wouldn't I? You're my man. Xiang scratched the back of his head. However, both internally and externally, you're still the chief steward. Only two people will know you hold the title of protector, me, and the one who will be joining you in that position soon. I feel like you're going to work me to death. Who's the other one? I'm still deciding. Anyway, your first command, no, your first request. I want information on Jin Soyop and Beek Myonggik. Xiang blinked, clearly not expecting that. Knowing those two, they should have at least sent a letter, but it's been completely quiet. You think something's happened to them? It might just be my imagination, that's why I'm asking you. Understood. As it happens, Zhang Xiok, who was the head of the Xialep branch of the Beggars' Union, is being transferred today to head the Yongyong branch. I'll see if I can get some help from him. I gave a nod. And I need information on Cho Sehui of the Hanbing sect. Can you get it? Of course, I'll have a report ready by tomorrow. I watched Xiang as he turned to leave, then slowly stood from my seat. When it comes to breaking through cultivation realms, the most important factor is time. Raising one realm and then another, this requires adjustment. The term essence, energy, spirit exists for a reason. If you forcibly break through 2 or 3 stages at once without proper transition, your body will eventually rupture from within. After advancing to the realm of dual light manifestation, I had honed my body further through real combat experience. The adaptation period was complete. Now it was time to leap forward again. I went straight into the inner quarters of the government office, pulled out the spiritual pills I had stored away, and swallowed them in one go. Tonight I would ascend to 5 Dragon Blooming Star. I sat cross-legged and let myself sink into deep meditation. Ha! I thought the great man himself might come, but to think the famous chief steward Xiang would visit in person. Zhang Xiok, newly assigned as the head of the Yongyong Beggars' Union branch, was positively beaming, his words and smile bursting with joy. From his point of view, this was nothing short of a miracle. Originally, Zhang Xiok had only been a Rankmanist 2 informant. People in that position never led entire branches. At best, they might assist someone else in a remote place like Xialep. But then he met Unwi and was forcibly made head of the Xialep branch. What came next was what truly mattered. One day, after a deep conversation with Unwi, Iron Hand Ghost Chen Sugeng raised the entire Yongyong Beggars branch to the ground. And the man chosen to fill that vacancy was Zhang Xiok of Xialep. The logic was simple. If someone who had a connection to Xial Unwi was placed in charge of the Yongyong branch, soon to fall under Unwi's rule, things would go much smoother. It would also greatly improve relations with the Beggars' Union. In the end, it was all thanks to Xial Unwi. But those 2 individuals you're looking for, to be honest, we don't know their current whereabouts. Ah, is that so? Yes, frankly speaking, we did try to trace their movements. Ah, but don't misunderstand, we didn't receive any specific orders. You know how it is with the Beggars' Union. Our informants are scattered everywhere, after gathering the available intel. We found their trail disappears near the 9 Dragon trade route. They vanished. Is that what you're saying? Yes, but the Beggars' Station there were only Rankmanist-1 and white-garbed informants, so I apologize. Why was Zhang Xiok being so respectful toward Chief Steward Xiang? The reason was simple. Xiang had deep personal ties to Xial Unwi. When Unwi lived in the palace, it was Xiang who had all but raised him. In that sense, Xiang's words carried the same weight as Unwi's. Just to confirm once more, their trail stopped on the 9 Dragon route, correct? Yes, Xiang's expression darkened. Ah, please don't worry too much. That terrain is brutal and the path leads toward the Divine Ginseng route, doesn't it? Those 2 know about the area. I bet they just took a detour. Divine Ginseng Route. That road led into Divine Ginseng Valley, the stretch of land between Bongri, Jiakan, Saryang, and Yangyong. The valley was famous for producing divine ginseng flowers. More accurately, it was the largest production site for them. These flowers were used as potent medicinal herbs. They expanded the bloodstream, boosted qi flow, sharpened focus, triggered temporary awakenings, and significantly accelerated training. The flowers were rarely consumed raw. Most were refined into either divine ginseng smoke or divine ginseng pills. The smoke could be inhaled like a rolled paper cigarette, no pipe needed. It worked instantly, short-lived but intensely effective. The pills were high-grade training resources. Many sought them for their long-term effects and sustained potency. If Jin Soyop and Beek Myonggik were in their right minds, they wouldn't have gone there. Yangyong had almost no real connection to divine Ginseng Valley. Though closest to it in distance, its power compared to the three other regions was practically non-existent. It was the kind of place where a mid-tier master from the 5-banner division could play king. Hardly the level of battlefield those two would be drawn into. Anyway, that aside, where exactly did their trail disappear? Ah, just a moment. Xianxia pulled out a nearby map, pointed to a spot along the 9-dragon route. Here it is. Xiang stared at the spot in silence, then finally spoke. Thank you. I'm sorry I couldn't be of more help. Next time I'll make sure I bring you better news. Ah, and please do tell Lord Unwi that I'll be paying him my respects later today. I just haven't had time to get everything sorted since the sudden transfer. Xiang gave him a faint smile as Xianxia scratched his head, clearly feeling guilty. I'll be sure to pass it along. I'll take my leave now. He bowed and turned away. As Xianxia called out, please speak well of me to the Lord, Xiang didn't even reply. He didn't have to. That was how serious his expression had become. Just a moment ago, he'd been smiling. Now the second Xianxia was behind him, his face turned ice cold. Unwi had been right. This was no mere worry. Jin Soyop and Beek Myonggik had undoubtedly displayed exceptional martial prowess during the annihilation of the 4 great clans. Though they had lowered their swords against the imperial forces, prior to that, the 2 of them alone had taken the lives of over 40 martial artists. Among the slain were warriors in the dual light manifestation realm, and even those who had reached heaven's circulating aperture. How could those 2 have possessed such overwhelming martial strength? It was because of the martial arts they used. The 1,000-kill wolf star technique, given to them by Unwi, and the heavenly image heart technique. Chief Steward Xiang, without hesitation, stepped into an alley, and the moment he felt all surrounding gazes disappear, he amplified the internal energy coursing through his entire body. His legs began to glow. Fyang. With a thunderclap of air bursting apart, he vanished from the spot like a bolt of light. Even in his deep meditation, Unwi remained utterly calm, as if there was not a single thing in this world he needed to worry about. Why had he decided the time had come? It was simple. Because during his time in the dual light manifestation, Yangguang Aihyun realm, his middle dantian had already begun to open. The realm of 5-dragon blooming star, Oryang Bangxiang, is the stage where the middle dantian is fully opened. The fact that it had already begun to open meant that his vessel had started to overflow, signaling that dual light manifestation could no longer contain him. Like light piercing through the crack of a door, anyone in that situation, not just Unwi, would have tried to leap to the next stage. Now all he had to do was widen that crack. Unwi's consciousness turned inward. The internal energy that had been swirling within his middle dantian began to flow toward a new path. Like water seeking a new channel, his energy began to knock on the Chang meridian first. Clack. A subtle vibration spread through his meridians. The Chang meridian was opening. As the energy followed this newly forged path, his inner force gradually stabilized. It wasn't enough. This energy was still just ordinary qi, not yet fused true essence. He refined its flow with even greater precision. It was sufficient for the Chang meridian alone. But to reach 5-dragon blooming star, both the Chang meridian and the Dai meridian had to be opened. Only then could the middle dantian function freely. As he focused his consciousness, the Dai meridian, which encircles the waist like a belt, began to react. It slowly opened, and as it did, Unwi's internal energy began to harmonize more completely. Quoom! A massive resonance erupted from within. With the Chang and Dai meridians opening simultaneously, the middle dantian was fully unlocked. The energy surging through his entire body, the force rising from his now flourishing middle dantian, Unwi felt it all slowly, deeply. At last, he had stepped into the realm of 5 dragon blooming star. He opened his eyes. The surrounding air froze with a sharp chill. It was a small change, but unmistakable proof that he had ascended to a higher realm. As he continued on this path, he would next open the Conception Meridian and Governor Meridian, and beyond that, the full awakening of the 8 extraordinary meridians would await him. But for now, he needed to focus on this moment. 3 flowers converge, essence refined. 5 banners form, origin reforged. And beyond that, the realm of heaven-earth intertwined perception. And even higher, the realm of martial gods' 5 realms. The road ahead was still long, but Unwi was moving forward, one steady step at a time. He closed his eyes again, drawing in breath, absorbing energy. The 9th bend of the 9-dragon trade route. Xianxia no Chief Steward Xiang stood tall upon it. His cold eyes swept across the surroundings, the wind, the thick snow piled high, the trees, the branches, the leaves. Everything fell within his gaze. As his dormant blood vessels rapidly regained their full sensation, the process surprisingly didn't take long. Chief Steward Xiang moved silently, stepping forward before carefully brushing aside the snow gathered near the base of the cliff. Footprints. He examined how deeply the prints were pressed into the snow, which direction the weight had shifted, and whether the wielder had channeled their inner power through the entire sole, only the toes, or just the heel. Everything revealed itself to his eyes, and he was certain. It began here. This was where inner force had been drawn forth. The traces made it clear it happened in the moment of shifting into a defensive stance upon encountering someone. His fingers brushed over the gouge in the tree nearby. The depth and angle of the wound told a story. From high to low, then twisted rightward as the blade was withdrawn. Someone had clashed swords here. And yet there were no other footprints, only 2 sets. Chief Steward Xiang inhaled slowly, then rose and scanned the surroundings. This time he saw traces of footwork. Though buried in snow, they could not deceive his eyes. Jin Soyop's military advancement step, and, he brushed aside more snow, Beek Myonggik's flowing step method. Back in the Sialep days, Xiang had observed both men closely. Even if Jin Soyop and Beek Myonggik had received martial arts and internal techniques from Unwi, Chief Steward Xiang still knew their footwork patterns. Jin had served in the cavalry, but cavalrymen didn't only fight from horseback. The footwork they used after dismounting was called the military advancement step. Beek Myonggik, on the other hand, used flowing step method, a technique once belonging to the xianxia sect, refined with the disciplined formation of Walguk's infantry. There was no doubt these were their movements, and in Xiang's mind the scene began to form. The 2 had encountered someone and drawn their swords. They had fought. Based on the intervals where movement paused, there had even been an exchange of words. Chief Steward Xiang silently followed the footprints. At times he noted which way the branches had been disturbed. At others, he read the faint nicks left on stones. Eventually, he stopped before the edge of a cliff. His eyes flashed. As I thought, he bent down, brushing snow from the cliff's edge. A red stain, old blood. He had to look below. Without hesitation, he pushed off the ground, bracing against the rock face as he began to descend. He soon spotted scattered blood traces. This wasn't blood drawn from a sword in midair or some such dramatic display. Someone had been flung from the cliff and, struggling to survive, had swung their arm, not to strike, but to find a handhold. Their goal had been simple, to catch the wall, but it hadn't gone well. The trail of blood cut off abruptly. That confirmed it. Chief Steward Xiang loosened the strength in the arm he'd been using to brace against the wall, and his body dropped. Roughly 100 jang down, yet he landed light as a feather. He scanned the base again, more closely this time, and spotted a gouged-out portion of the cliff. There he found the corpse, mangled beyond recognition. Wild dogs had clearly gotten to it, but the cause of death was unmistakable. A sword wound, one deep, clean strike. The body belonged to Beek Myonggik. Chief Steward Xiang stared down at the corpse with cold eyes. Every person lives by their choices. If one has no regrets about those choices, that's enough. Beek Myonggik had made his choice, to leave, to hold on to his convictions. But to believe those convictions would always lead to good outcomes was a delusion best abandoned. This is the martial world. The romanticism of the martial world has long since died. Xiang quietly reflected. Beek Myonggik's corpse is here, but the blood trail nearby clearly belongs to Jin Soyop. So why is there no body? With that much blood loss, the injuries would have to be critical. Odd, he needed more than certainty, he needed confirmation. He stepped back, looking out over the area as a whole, footprints, broken branches. The scene came together. Beek Myonggik had been wounded and thrown from the cliff. In response, Jin Soyop had thrown himself after him, breaking branches as he landed. Then someone followed Jin Soyop down and fought him there. The enemy toyed with Jin. Parts of the cliff were gouged, blood was splattered, branches broken. Jin had been thrown into the wall 8 times at least. It was clear now. Jin Soyop had suffered grievous wounds. So severe that without treatment, survival was unlikely, but at some point the bleeding had stopped. His opponent had stemmed the bleeding. That meant they needed him alive. They had a reason to take him, more certainty, only one culprit. Chief Steward Xiang's eyes narrowed. Taking both men would have been difficult. So the enemy made a choice to dispose of one. All the clues now fit together. Their attacker was a master. At least 3 flowers converge, possibly even 5 banners form. That level of power was necessary to dispatch them so cleanly. More than that, the enemy had revealed neither footwork nor martial techniques. They had subdued and killed with plain swordplay alone. Even though Jin Soyop and Beek Myonggik had unleashed everything they had, it wasn't enough. They hadn't even managed a scratch. It was enough. Beek Myonggik was dead. Jin Soyop had been taken. Chief Steward Xiang recovered the corpse, then left the gorge. He had a report to make. To Unwi. Shortly after reaching the realm of 5 Dragon Blooming Star, Xiao Unwi began examining the changes in his body, one by one. Inside him, his inner force now flowed with far greater strength along the Chang and Dai meridians. Compared to the dual light manifestation stage, the power coursing through him was incomparably stronger, like a quiet stream that had suddenly become a surging river. Thanks to his abnormally thick blood channels, his capacity to store inner force far exceeded that of other martial artists. But even so, the barriers between realms could not be ignored. Even with the use of false innate energy, that much remained true. He raised his palm and gathered inner force. A pale white glow began to shimmer above his hand. Before, this process would have taken time. Now a mere thought summoned it instantly. That was what it meant to unlock the middle dantian. To be honest, he still didn't quite like it, but he chose to see it as a positive. He quietly steadied his breath. His inner force swirled violently, circulating through every part of his body. A subtle vibration began beneath his skin, followed by a faint mist rising from his pores. The impurities within his body were being expelled. After continuing his meditation for about 1 more shijin, Unwi slowly rose to his feet. At most, it had been 3 shijin. When he advanced further in cultivation, the conception and governor meridians would open. Beyond that, the complete awakening of the 8 extraordinary meridians awaited him. It was fine. He wasn't in a rush. To be impatient would be to walk the path of those other carriers of wide meridians whose bodies had ruptured under the pressure. He wasn't stupid enough to make that kind of mistake, because Xiao Unwi was not that kind of man. After changing into clean clothes, Unwi stepped outside and froze. Found him on the 9 Dragon Trade route. It was the corpse of Beek Myonggik, mutilated beyond recognition. Unwi stood in silence for a long time, staring at the body. So his worst suspicion had Novelight come true. But as with most things in life, one's intuitions don't always come to pass. Unwi was no exception. He had made countless predictions in his life, and many of them were wrong. He had hoped the unease he felt over Jin Soyop and Beek Myonggik's disappearance was just that, unfounded worry. He ran a hand down his face. This was reality, Unwi spoke. Any thoughts on who it was? I'm not sure. He raised his eyes to Han Murin. Do you have something to say? I say this only because it might cross your mind. But it wasn't me. Unwi studied Han Murin for a moment before replying in a calm voice. There's one thing I can make absolutely clear. I don't suspect any of you. Given the timing alone, it's impossible for it to have been you. So put that worry aside. Then Unwi turned to Chief Steward Xiang. You said it was someone above 5 banners form? Yes, from what I could tell, at the very least 5 banners form. Xiang's words trailed off. He'd spoken so naturally, caught up in the moment. But officially, both inside and outside the palace, Xiang was nothing more than a civilian. Unwi watched his pale expression and said quietly, Chief Steward Xiang is a member of the White Snow Phantom Corps. His current realm is Spirit Ascension Stage. Namgung Wanyang and Chenpeng both gasped, as did Xiang himself. Only Han Murin remained unsurprised. Young master, you shouldn't reveal that so casually. They were bound to find out sooner or later. Better to answer the questions I ask than waste time playing pretend. Xiang scratched his head and sighed. Fine, I understand. I'm sure you have your reasons. Then to answer your question, yes, it was at least a master of 5 banners form. If the attacker had been merely 3 flowers converge, there's no way Jin Soyop and Beek Myonggik would have been taken down so easily. Your reasoning. You already know. You've watched them train. Those two, even as they were, could have at least left a small wound on a master at that level. Maybe scrawled a name across their back in blood. If they'd gone in ready to die, they could have carved out a solid gash, handspan wide. But there was nothing there, no blood but theirs. You're certain? Absolutely. Not a single extra blood stain, not even a scrap of torn cloth, not a single strand of hair. It was a game to the attacker. They played with them, then abducted one. Yes, one person came, killed one, took the other. You believe he's still alive? ... It's possible, but I'm doubtful. Time to return to the root of the matter. Why had Unwi suspected something might happen to those two in the first place? It wasn't intuition born of ignorance. It was a matter of how you used the information you had. In this case, a single name had to be considered. What's the martial level of Hanbing Sect's Cho Sehui? He's at 5 banners form. 4 days ago, the day I arrived in Yangyong and burned down the 4 major sects and killed the magistrate, I heard Cho Sehui left for Hanbing Sect that same day. Is there any definitive proof that he actually left? No proof, just a few resident eyewitnesses, and that's it. But he did leave the government office, that much is certain. What if he left the office and simply observed from afar? The Hanbing sect is part of my maternal lineage. Even before this, I've always kept them in check. No, not just in check. His voice dropped, colder now. They played a major role in turning me into a dog. Young master. Before he died, Han Jiangguang said something. If Juriyoung Swordgate managed to kill me, Hanbing sect would clean up the mess. They'd struck a deal. You never mentioned that. That needs to be reported to the Palace Lord immediately. Chief Steward Xiang hadn't been there when that happened, which meant this was his first time hearing it, and for once he was visibly furious. This is outrageous. No matter if you're an illegitimate son, you still carry the rightful bloodline of the Palace Lord. How could they conspire to have you killed? By some second-rate clan like that? That was the correct reaction. That was how any sane person would respond. But those drunk on power never think that way. And worse, they're often more cunning than expected. Chief Steward Xiang, you're good at investigations, but do you really not understand people? Excuse me? If Han Jiangguang had killed me, do you really think the Hanbing sect would have cleaned up the mess? What are you saying? The Hanbing sect never intended to clean up anything. Han Jiangguang was nothing but a disposable knife to them, used and discarded. If I had died, the Hanbing sect would have been the first to destroy Juriyoung Swordgate themselves. Wipe out the accomplices. And then, a classic case of discarding the hound once the hunt is over. Unwi cracked his neck as he spoke. The picture had already come together in his mind. Chief Steward Xiang. Yes, young master. Can you prepare 5 horses, 1 wagon, some cultivation supplies, and spiritual pills? Right now? Not immediately. But I'd like it ready within 1 handajong, 15 minutes at most. I'm going too. You don't seem too fond of hiding your identity as a member of the White Snow Phantom Corps. Don't you think it's time to stop pretending? Young master, you don't need to go that far. I'm fine just living out my life as the chief steward. You didn't look that fine earlier. Unwi reached out and gently patted Xiang's shoulder. Whether you remain chief steward or something else, I'll always treat you with the utmost respect. But the Phantom Corps, that title is nothing more than a shackle on you. It's not giving you anything in return. Just yesterday, weren't you trembling in fear, thinking you'd be reprimanded by the commander? Am I wrong? You are. I am? Yes, I wasn't trembling. Unwi gave a small laugh. If you say so, either way I plan to break your shackles. And once they're broken, I know you'll still stay by my side. So why say more? Xiang scratched his head again. I'll be there in 1 handajong, have everything ready. Understood. And before we leave, I plan to conduct Beek Myonggik's funeral. Could you gather some firewood for the pyre? The to-do list just keeps growing, huh? You should have recruited more men when I told you to. That too, within a handajong. Understood. With that, Unwi set out with 3 of his subordinates. Their destination, Yangyong Hall. Inside Yangyong Hall, the leaders of the region's factions had gathered. Jin Horan, master of the Jade Tiger Gate. Chung Myonja, master of the Azure Cloud Gate. Yong Wangok, patriarch of the Yong clan. Shin Jianghu, patriarch of the Shin clan. And among them, Chen Iyajin, head of the World Commerce Association. They were all here and all visibly uneasy. The reason for their gathering was simple. Xiao Unwi, the new ruler of Yangyong, had summoned them. And what kind of man was Sial Unwi? A terrifying man. Whatever the world called him, the demon of the snowy mountain or some other such name, these people had seen him with their own eyes. They had witnessed his cruelty firsthand. In a single night, hundreds were slaughtered. More than anything, they had seen him carrying the severed head of Han Jiangguang, an arrogant master of 5 banners form, and laying waste to Yangyong without mercy. Only a madman would refuse such a summons. Before long, Unwi entered the hall. He stood over 6 feet tall with a solid, muscular build. His hair hung loose, his eyes sharp and piercing. A high-bridged nose, firmly shut lips. His face was handsome overall, yet wore an expression carved in absolute stubbornness. Behind him walked 3 figures, 2 men and a woman, the massive Chenpeng. Though technically only at the root heaven stage, his monstrous strength was such that he could go toe-to-toe with masters of dual light manifestation or even 5 dragon blooming star, a man whose might defied reason. Next to him walked a beautiful woman, Namgung Wanyang, her cultivation, dual light manifestation. When Unwi reduced Yangyong to ashes, she had been at his side the entire time. Always the first to draw blood, her ruthless swordplay was legendary. But no less legendary was her beauty, flawless to the point she had already earned the title of Yangyong's most beautiful woman. And finally, Han Murin. Also at the root heaven stage, but every person present stared at him with dread. That man was insane. He smiled when he killed. The aura of bloodlust constantly radiated from him. He didn't seem interested in anything other than murder. In many ways, he was more dangerous than Sial Unwi himself. Unwi came to a stop. The 3 subordinates behind him halted as well. The gathered powers waited for Unwi to speak, but what followed left them speechless. Without a moment's hesitation, the 3 drew their swords. All at once, the atmosphere turned suffocating. Time itself seemed to slow. Unwi, unfazed, took out a large scroll from his sleeve and unfurled it on the floor. Then, with his hands behind his back, he spoke in a calm, level tone. I don't think I need to introduce myself. You all know who I am. So I'll get straight to the point. From this moment until I finish speaking, no one is permitted to ask questions. If you interrupt me, I will cut off your head without hesitation. So open your ears and listen carefully. Somewhere in the hall, someone audibly swallowed. Unwi resumed speaking slowly and clearly. Now that I am the rightful master of Yangyong, no one may oppose my will. His voice was cold as frost. If anyone dares oppose me, I will execute them on the spot, without question. He began to walk, measured and calm. But demanding only rights without accepting duty, that's no way for a man of honor to live. So I'll make this promise here and now. Anyone who signs their name on this scroll before me will be protected without fail by me, Sial Unwi, until the day they die. Jin Horan's eyes widened. Cheng Myongja, Yong Wangak, and Shin Jianghu all looked equally shaken. If I am ever unable to protect them, then the everlasting Snow Palace will. That is a vow I make in both my name and the name of Sialgung. You have no reason to doubt it. At the mention of the Snow Palace, Yong Wangak inhaled sharply. The room's atmosphere grew even heavier. Now, what happens to those who don't sign? Listen carefully because this part matters most. He came to a stop. Whatever happens in Yangyong, I will turn a blind eye. Cheng Myongja looked up, startled. What? Turn a blind eye? That's right, I will ignore it. If those who refuse to sign are annihilated, if their entire families are slaughtered, I will not lift a finger. Jin Horan and Shin Jianghu glanced at each other, their mouths slightly agape. Seeing it in person, there was no doubt now. This man was completely insane. Now, for those who do sign, if anyone lays a hand on them without my permission, even a single hair, they will become my enemy in that moment. And I will hold them accountable with everything I have. If one of mine dies, I will kill 2. If 2 die, I'll kill 4. Cheng Myongja's face had gone pale. No one present misunderstood his meaning. He was making it clear. Those he took under his protection, he would protect completely. And everyone here was smart enough to understand just how serious he was. But there was one more thing that had to be said. And one more thing, even if someone signs. There is one crime I will never overlook. Unwi's gaze slid over to Xianxia. For example, if someone like the World Commerce Association tried, heaven forbid, to seize control of all of Yangyong for themselves, then regardless of whether they signed the scroll or not, I would wipe them out completely. When a servant tries to play master in the master's house, what can be done? You cut off their head. He stepped forward until he stood right in front of Xianxia. The merchant instinctively swallowed. Head merchant Chen. Why, yes, Master Hyun Sialin. I heard you built pavilions on the estate grounds of Hunshan Palace and Jangumon. Is that true? I'd like you to answer here and now. Why did you build them? That is? Choose your words carefully. I suggest you think very hard. Sweat beaded on Unyielding's brow. Every word from Unwi now felt like a blade resting against his throat. With a trembling voice, Unyielding answered, I was planning to build a tavern, and maybe an inn. A tavern? Yes. You see, Hunshan Palace and Jangumon's estates are famous for being in the best locations in all of Yangyong. Of course, the best location of all is now the government office, your future residence. But leaving those two plots idle seemed like a waste, wouldn't you agree? Now that he was speaking, the words began to flow. This was his moment. His instincts as a merchant took over. And so, by building large taverns and inns there, we can generate consistent profit. With Yangyong now a critical stronghold of the everlasting Snow Palace, many travelers will pass through. Other regions are caught in vicious territorial struggles over the divine Ginseng Valley, but at least here things are relatively calm. I see. And what did you plan to do with that profit? His throat bobbed. This was the crucial moment. From here on out, every word mattered. Naturally, I planned to give it to you, Master Xianxia. The share would be, perhaps 60% of net profit. A soft smile formed at Unwi's lips. He reached out and lightly brushed Unyielding's shoulder, as expected of the World Commerce Association. Still, you're doing all that work. You should keep something for yourself. Excuse me? If you give me 60% of the net profit and still pay your taxes to the Snow Palace, there won't be much left for you. That seems excessive. I think 20% would be more reasonable. Thank you. And no matter how grand your taverns end up being, don't you think those who sign the scroll deserve some perks? Of course. Whether it's discounts or special services, I trust you to figure that out on your own. I leave that entirely in your hands. Understood. Unwi stood upright and spoke curtly. I've said all I needed to say. If anyone still doesn't understand, raise your hand now. Thankfully, no one raised their hand. Then sign the scroll. Without needing to be told twice, everyone present rushed to the document and scribbled their names. Unwi returned to the everlasting Snow Palace. As soon as he arrived, he held a brief funeral for Beek Myonggik and was preparing to depart when an unexpected visitor arrived. It was Xianxia. Oh, I guess I've come at a bad time, Xianxia said, sounding uneasy. Unwi shook his head. There was something he wanted to discuss anyway. This was as good a time as any, but first he had to ask, what brings you here? Oh, it's nothing important. I just came to thank you, Xianxia said with a slight smile. Unwi chuckled softly. Xianxia, yes, there's no need to thank me. Everything you've achieved, you've earned through your own efforts, haven't you? The opportunity was given to me by Lord Xianxia. That may be true, but there are countless people who receive opportunities and never take advantage of them. Xianxia scratched his head, embarrassed. Unwi then asked, are you planning to keep maintaining the Xiaolson Sword Gate? Yes. That's your choice. I won't say anything against it. Originally, I intended to replace the Juryung Sword Gate's position with the Xiaolson Sword Gate. I was going to ask you about it anyway. Do you intend to move your base? Xianxia thought for a moment before shaking his head. I'll stay in Xialap. After all, Xialap is under Lord Xiaolan's jurisdiction, isn't it? Unwi nodded. That's true. What about your training in the heavenly ultimate sword technique? I'm nearly at the brink of mastery. Good. Once you fully mastered it, come to me. I'll give you the heavenly reversal sword technique as well. Xianxia's eyes widened. He hadn't expected to receive it so soon. A subtle, enigmatic smile formed on his lips. You're being far too generous. Is there something you want from me in return? Unwi shook his head. No, I find that hard to believe. This is the martial world, after all. The Heavenly Sword Emperor's techniques are so valuable that their worth can't even be calculated, and yet you gave them to me. And now you're offering the reversal sword technique so early, I can't help but ask. In the martial world, there are no favors without a price. Isn't it already clear? Aren't you already my man? Yes, I am Lord Xiaolan's man. Are you planning to betray me? I'd have to be out of my mind. I've never lived that shamelessly. Then what more is there to say? Xianxia was momentarily speechless. Raise your power. And raise your forces, understand. Xianxia quietly cupped his fists in respect. As you command, Lord. Unwi smirked slightly. Lord, I thought it would be inappropriate to keep calling you Lord Xiaolan. Why? I am not grateful to the man who commands the everlasting Snow Palace. I am grateful to the man named Unwi. Is that so? Therefore, from now on, I will call you Lord instead. Suit yourself. Without further words, Unwi turned away. His companions for the upcoming journey had already been decided. Han Murin and Chief Steward Xiang. Unwi's destination was not the everlasting snow palace but the Hanbing sect. It took 3 days to reach the Hanbing sect, located deep within the frozen mountains. Sheer cliffs, endless glaciers, and countless jagged rocks made the path to Hanbing sect particularly treacherous. "Young master, this is the Hanbing sect's territory," Chief Steward Xiang said, breaking the silence. Buildings began to appear amidst the snow. They looked as though they had grown out of the glaciers themselves, an architectural style unique to the Hanbing sect. They carved pillars out of the ice and built their structures atop them, creating the illusion that the buildings were floating atop the frozen ground. While their martial strength was formidable, the Hanbing sect was renowned not for sheer force, but for the exceptional quality of their techniques and craftsmanship. As you know, the Hanbing sect's forging techniques are unparalleled in the Snow Mountain region. They can work with steel and medicinal ingredients even in such frigid conditions, Xiang continued. It was not without reason that they had been able to form a marriage alliance with Xianxia, the supreme leader of the everlasting Snow Palace. There were valid reasons behind every alliance. Unwi said nothing. Before coming here, Unwi had thoroughly investigated the area where Jin Soyop and Beek Myonggik had fought. If not for that, he would have arrived much sooner. But he had no regrets. Unwi's gaze fixed on the main gate of the Hanbing sect. The gatekeeper, upon noticing the insignia of xianxia on the carriage, was startled. And when he met Unwi's cold gaze, he shuddered a second time. The gatekeeper hurried inside and returned in less than half an incense stick's time. "Well, there's currently a meeting being held in the council hall. If you could wait inside for a moment." Unwi glanced at the visibly flustered gatekeeper, then nodded without a word and began to walk. Why isn't he riding the carriage? And why is he heading? Directly toward the council hall. Sensing that something was amiss, the gatekeeper attempted to stop Unwi, but he was soon faced with Han Murin's chilling glare. It was a look that said, "If you interfere, I'll rip out your throat." The gatekeeper swallowed his fear and retreated. The three of them continued walking until they reached the council hall, where a meeting was in progress. The middle-aged man seated in the highest seat frowned upon seeing the three of them enter. That man was Jin Yongjie, one of the sect leaders within Unwi's maternal family and Unwi's maternal uncle. The meeting came to a sudden halt as the three of them entered. "I thought I told you to wait. Seems you've taken the wrong path," Jin Yongjie said coldly. "No, uncle," Unwi replied, his eyes serious. "I don't have time to waste." "Those of you seated, you can remain where you are," Unwi said, his voice calm yet firm. "Fine, get to the point quickly," Jin Yongjie said, his voice dripping with frost. Unwi's gaze swept over the hall. This was the heart of the Hanbing sect, a place steeped in centuries of history. He spoke without a hint of hesitation. "The forging techniques of the Hanbing sect are the best in the Snow Mountain region. Your medicinal refinement techniques are second to none. These are invaluable assets to the everlasting Snow Palace, and they will continue to be." Jin Yongjie's eyes narrowed slightly. "As you know, I care deeply about the everlasting Snow Palace. I would do anything for its future. But unfortunately, there is a grudge between me and the Hanbing sect, a grudge that you yourself created, uncle." Jin Yongjie let out a mocking laugh. "A grudge, you say? Well said. Yes, you did shatter Unhe's limbs and kill his guards, didn't you?" Unwi's eyes darkened. "Did you not hear why?" "I did." "Good. Those guards deserved N-O-V-Y-L Cyrillic letter 456 G-H-T, don't copy, read here, to die for what they did. And fourth brother deserved to be beaten for what he did. What more is there to say?" Jin Yongjie's gaze turned icy. "You've changed a lot, haven't you? The world is a tumultuous place. It's only natural to change." "Fine. I've heard what you had to say. Now tell me the real reason you're here." Unwi took a deep breath. He was being as courteous as possible. "There is one thing I must ask first. Speak. I place great importance on grudges. As do I, and if one gives something, one must also receive something in return. That is the way of the martial world, is it not? And so, hand over Cho Sehui, I need to interrogate him." Jin Yongjie's lips twisted into a smirk. "For something so trivial, something so trivial." That single phrase struck Unwi's heart like a hammer. Unwi's expression grew darker. The air in the council hall turned icy. "That is trivial." That single word echoed in Unwi's chest, reverberating like a heavy blow. "Cho Sehui is the future of the Hanbing sect, a prodigy who reached the 5 banners form at such a young age. And you expect me to hand him over for such a trivial matter? What would that make of my reputation?" The word trivial struck even deeper, but it was the word reputation that pierced the deepest. And Jin Yang sneered. You think that just because you seized that little patch of land in Sialap, everything has changed? Do you actually believe that taking over a remote, insignificant territory at the edge of the snow mountain makes you a central figure in the everlasting snow palace? Jin Yang's eyes were cold, and his mind was sharp. The very fact that Unwi stood here demanding things from him was a thorn in his side. If you want something, you must give something in return. Yes, he agreed with that, but only to a point. A lunatic who seized a minor territory and dared to march into the Hanbing sect's sacred hall as if he were now an equal. Just because fortune smiled on you once, you think you're now qualified to speak as equals with us. Is taking over some insignificant backwater something to be so proud of? Was that such an outstanding achievement? Jin Yang's laughter echoed throughout the hall. Oh, I still remember it well. That day when Unhi whipped you, how you were crawling on the ground like a dog. Yes, to you, taking over that backwater must feel like a grand accomplishment. It will probably be the greatest achievement of your pitiful life. His hands moved in a dismissive gesture. And now you have the audacity to demand one of Hanbing sect's most promising warriors, a man who reached the 5 banners form. Unwi remained silent, staring at him without blinking. Jin Yang's arrogance continued unabated. Yes, I hear you have a few sects under your thumb now. They say the Juryung Sword Gate has fallen, and that the Long Sword Sect and Qinggwun Dao Sect have also crumbled. But what does that matter? They were just minor sects on the outskirts of the Snow Mountain. Do you think crushing a few ants makes you equal to the Hanbing sect? Jin Yang paused, looking down at Unwi as though he were nothing more than dirt beneath his shoes. I thought you would have some sense of propriety by now, but clearly you haven't changed at all. You're still the same pitiful weed that grew up in the backyard. And now you come here to this sacred council hall and dare to demand the future of the Hanbing sect. Every word he spoke was a deliberate insult directed at Unwi. But what Jin Yang still didn't realize was exactly whom he was mocking. Nor did he understand why Unwi remained silent, standing there, enduring the barrage of insults without a single word of protest. Unwi's eyes changed, darkening. He had given a step back, yet they demanded 2, 3, 4 more. And Jin Yang showed no intention of backing down even a fraction. On the contrary, he openly ridiculed Unwi by dredging up old wounds, humiliating him before all present. This needed to be clarified. There were 2 grudges between Unwi and the Hanbing sect. One was personal, a matter between Unwi himself and the Hanbing sect. The other was not. It was about those who followed him. The former was a grudge he could choose to bury. After all, it was a matter from before his return to the past, and the value of the Hanbing sect was far too significant. Their forging techniques were the best in the Snow Mountain region. Their medicinal refinement techniques were equally unmatched. Most of the doctors in the main palace's medical ward were originally from the Hanbing sect. Whether those old grudges lingered or not, Unwi couldn't care less. As he had told Xiao Yongchen, Unwi was willing to do anything for the future of the Snow Mountain. This was something he had failed to accomplish in his previous life. Now that he had been given a second chance, he was determined to see it through. If handing over Cho Sehui was enough to settle everything, he was willing to bury the past. But there was a line that could not be crossed. This was a matter of hierarchy, of principles. Unwi began to walk forward, one slow, deliberate step at a time. Xiao Unwi climbed the steps without a single moment of hesitation. The gatekeepers drew their swords, but his stride remained unbroken. One step, another. Each time he passed, the hands of those gripping their swords trembled. And all of this was being watched by the sect master of Hanbing with an expression of mild interest. He was curious to see just how far Xiao Unwi would go. So, he waved his hand dismissively. He may look like that, but he's still a scion of the extreme North sect. Sheathe your swords. Xiao Unwi's gaze brushed over him. The moment their eyes met, Jin Yang's words died in his throat. It felt as though his heart had frozen solid. What is this? What the hell is this? His heart quivered, and for a brief instant he felt as though his very existence had been severed from the world. At the high seat in the grand hall, Jin Yang, seated on a chair that looked like it was carved from ice, stared intently at Xiao Unwi. He was a martial artist, too. He wasn't foolish enough to ignore such a chilling, otherworldly aura. Xiao Unwi stopped right in front of Jin Yang's seat. Slowly, he placed his left hand on the armrest. Then he placed his right hand. And then he leaned forward. They were so close that not even a single inch separated them. The air turned suffocatingly cold. This was no longer a mere threat or a warning. It was as if the chill of a thousand-year glacier had descended upon the room. The aura of one who had once stood at the pinnacle of the heavens now engulfed the entire hall. "Tell me," Unwi said, his voice low and even. "Do you want to die?" His tone was calm, but the power behind it made Jin Yang's face go deathly pale. His eyes quivered violently. Only now did he truly see it. The depth in the eyes of the nephew he had always regarded as insignificant. It was like staring into the abyss of a thousand-year glacier. "Is this Unwi, that bastard child, that sickly, useless fool?" Unwi spoke again, his voice as cold as the ice itself. "If the one who killed my men was acting under your orders, uncle." The murderous intent in his words spread throughout the hall, and everyone present swallowed nervously. "The Hanbing sect will be annihilated. Every bloodline except Unwi's will be wiped out." Annihilation. The word struck a nerve in Jin Yang, and just as he was about to move, Unwi's right hand shot forward like a lightning bolt, grabbing Jin Yang by the collar. "Uncle, you bastard. This is not a warning," Unwi said, his grip tightening. "This is a declaration, do you understand?" Unwi released his grip and took a step back. Naturally, he reigned in his murderous aura as well. For a while, Jin Yang simply stared at him in silence. Unwi met his gaze unflinchingly. After a long silence, Jin Yang finally spoke. "Your arrogance reaches the heavens. Are you talking about me? You dare speak of annihilation before me, dare? Do you think I can't do it? You can't. Then just ignore it. And when the consequences come, you can deal with them yourself." Jin Yang rose from his seat. "Even if you are a descendant of the everlasting snow palace, you should learn to choose your words carefully." "I believe I am choosing them very carefully." "No, you are not. If you had been, you would not have said such thoughtless words. Whether or not the name of the everlasting snow palace grants you some weight, the fact that the word annihilation came from your mouth means I can't just let this go." A strange smile formed on Unwi's lips. That's twice now you've brought up the name of the everlasting snow palace. Do I seem to you like someone who's relying on that name right now? Aren't you?" "No, I am not." "No," Jin Yang said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "That's how it appears to me." It wasn't just Jin Yang, everyone in Sialep, everyone in Yangyong. They all believed the same thing, but they were wrong, terribly wrong. "You've never seen me actually rely on the name of the everlasting snow palace. But that's fine. Let me show you what it looks like." Unwi stared directly at Jin Yang, his words clear and deliberate, each one sinking into Jin Yang's mind like an ice pick. "I am asking the sect master of the Hanbing sect, as a scion of the extreme north sect, do you want your sect to be annihilated?" This time, his voice wasn't low. It was amplified with internal energy, echoing through the entire hall, ensuring that every single person present heard him clearly. Everyone swallowed nervously, visibly shaken by the intensity of his words. Jin Yang's aura flared violently. "You've lost your mind. Have you been eating something that's rotted your brain for the past 6 years?" "I've been eating quite well. Only the healthiest, most nourishing things," Unwi said, smirking. "But you still haven't answered my question. Do you want your sect to be annihilated?" "Madman," Jin Yang lunged forward, grabbing Unwi by the collar. "Annihilation. Annihilation? And what justification do you think you have to even speak such words? A worm like you." "That's twice now that you've made me repeat myself," Unwi said, knocking Jin Yang's hand away with a sharp strike. "I am a scion of the extreme north sect, and as for justification, it can be created." "Created? You must be insane." Unwi swatted Jin Yang's hand away. "Move your hand, before I tear it off." "Listen well," Unwi said, his tone sharp and cutting. "I am the blood of the everlasting snow palace. Whether you like it or not, half the blood that flows through my veins is the blood of Yunchen, the supreme leader of the everlasting snow palace, my father." Jin Yang's gaze turned even colder as he stared at Unwi. Unwi's gaze was as sharp as a blade. "Whether I'm a bastard or a legitimate heir, it doesn't matter. What matters is the blood that flows in my veins. So whose words do you think they'll believe?" "What? For instance, what if I said that the Hanbing sect wasn't just plotting to assassinate me, but was actually planning to undermine the authority of the everlasting snow palace? That they intended to assassinate every scion of the extreme north sect? If that were the narrative, how do you think they'd respond?" That's ridiculous. You call that justification? You're drowning in your own delusions. A justification built on lies has no power." "Lies, huh?" Unwi smirked, his eyes glinting with cold malice. "Is that really what you think?" Let me remind you, the four major sects of Yangyong have been exploiting Sialap for years. Why do you think they sent soldiers to kill me? And why was Cho Sehui, a member of the Hanbing sect, present in Magistrate Jiang Mugwi's office? The very man who signed the execution order against me. Also, there are multiple discrepancies in the financial records. Funds that were supposed to go to the magistrate and the four major sects simply vanished. Now, let me ask again, do you still think it's all a lie? 90 truths mixed with a single lie, that's all it takes to make the lie the truth. And I'm quite good at turning 90 lies into 90 truths, and I have the power to do so. Jin Yang's jaw clenched, his expression darkened. What are you trying to say? Xiao Unwi's voice dropped to a deadly calm. Have you forgotten? This is the Snow Mountain. The Snow Mountain is ruled by the everlasting Snow Palace, and I am a direct descendant of that palace. Do you really think a mere maternal sect holds more authority than that bloodline? Jin Yang let out a bitter laugh. You're telling me what would happen if you actually used the authority of the everlasting Snow Palace to its fullest. You're already denying that power before you even use it, which means you know exactly how terrifying that power can be. His laughter died down. Yes, the title of a scion of the extreme North sect carries power. That power is undeniable. Jin Yang opened his mouth to say something, but then closed it. Xiao Unwi continued, his gaze piercing through Jin Yang. Let me repeat myself, this is not Zhangyuan. This is the Snow Mountain. In the Snow Mountain, there is no nation. Even the Yang Empire, the closest neighboring country, can't lay claim to this place. The people of the Snow Mountain are just that, people of the Snow Mountain. And the everlasting Snow Palace rules over the entirety of the Snow Mountain. Being a direct descendant of the palace is no different from being royalty in any other nation. Xiao Unwi leaned forward slightly. I have never intended to use that authority, not now, not in the future. But the problem here is that a fool like you doesn't seem to understand his place. Xiao Unwi's voice was as cold as the glaciers surrounding them. They say that lies run a sprint while the truth runs a marathon. That's right. In the end, only the truth will remain. Unwi smiled, a chilling, predatory smile. I won't deny it. That's why I intend to cut the legs off the truth, so it won't be able to run any longer. And at the end of it all, the only one left standing will be me. And at that point, whatever comes out of my mouth will be the truth. Jin Yang's face contorted, and his voice trembled with barely suppressed rage. A scion of the extreme North sect, and yet you possess the qualities of a true devil. Oh, is that how you see it? A devil who distorts the truth and crushes his opponents with the weight of his lineage. You're not just any devil. You're the kind of devil that could plunge the entire world into chaos. Thank you for the compliment. That wasn't a compliment. Xiao Unwi didn't care. Compliment or not, it made no difference to him. Calmly, he extended his index finger and pressed it against Jin Yang's chest, right where his heart was. What I'm trying to say is this. Whether I'm at the spirit ascension stage, the divine transformation stage, or just an ordinary man with no martial arts training, none of it matters. Because if I decide to kill you, uncle, you're as good as dead. Unwi paused for a moment, rolling his neck as though to loosen his muscles. And another thing. He leaned closer, his gaze icy and penetrating. Do you know the one thing you should never touch in the everlasting Snow Palace? What is it? The scions of the extreme North sect, Unwi said calmly. It doesn't matter if they're bastards or legitimate heirs. Attacking a scion is tantamount to challenging the authority of the everlasting Snow Palace itself. In other words, it's as good as a death sentence. So, you'd better listen very carefully to what I'm about to say. Xiao Unwi's voice dropped, every word sharp and cutting. One of my people was killed. If you were the one who ordered it, then I will use every single resource at my disposal to wipe the Hanbing sect off the face of the earth. Bloodlines. Except for Xiao Unhi, I won't leave a single one alive. And every single person associated with the Hanbing sect will die. If they run, I will chase them NOVELIGHT to the ends of Zhangyuan. If they so much as brushed fingers with one of your men, I will hunt them down and kill them. His finger pressed harder against Jin Yang's chest, right over his heart. The heart of a warrior who has reached the heavenly realm may be hard as stone, but before me, it's nothing more than a fragile lump of flesh. In the everlasting Snow Palace, where the power of a scion of the extreme North sect is absolute, your heart is nothing more than a weak piece of meat. Do you understand what I'm saying? Jin Yang said nothing, or rather he couldn't say anything. He finally understood the situation he was in. For 6 years you've been playing games, it's time to stop, Unwi said coldly. There's nothing more pathetic than a grown man getting himself buried along with a spoiled brat. Do you understand me? Yes, I understand. Good, now we can finally talk, Unwi said, a faint smile forming on his lips. Now I can proceed with what I came here to do. What do you intend to do? Unwi's voice was calm, almost casual. Han Murin. The call was unexpected, and from behind, Han Murin's voice echoed in response. Yes, Lord xianxia. The second row on the left, the third man, make him kneel. Before Unwi had even finished his sentence, Han Murin had already drawn his sword and charged forward without hesitation. Unwi calmly turned around and began descending the dais. Step by step, he moved down, his gaze sweeping over the gathered crowd. One by one, he locked eyes with each person present. Then his gaze settled on one man. Unwi's eyes fell to the sword sheathed at the man's waist. A cold, dangerous smile spread across his lips. It's you! The man with the long hair flinched, visibly shaken. Without another word, Sial Unwi charged forward, his expression devoid of mercy. One thing was clear. If someone under my command decided to walk a different path, I would let them go without a second thought. Whether their heart had already left or not was irrelevant. They weren't children. If a person made a decision, respecting it was the right thing to do. Especially if you disregarded the resolve of your own people, that disqualified you from being a leader. When Unyielding said she was leaving, I tried to hold her back not because her resolve was unwavering, but because the odds of her wasting her life were far too high. In my previous life, I had never heard the name Namgung Unyielding. Jin Soyop and Baek Myungik were certain about the paths they wanted to take. Home, the government, I didn't stop them. I even gave them famed swords to protect themselves. Yes, famed swords. Those swords were undoubtedly famed. The sword that the Lord of Jiayang sword sect had once wielded was a famed blade, as were the 3 swords he kept in his residence. They were top-tier weapons, even among those ranked as mystic grade, and could easily rival the Sialbeek sword. I gave one of those swords to Unyielding and the remaining 2 to Jin Soyop and Baek Myungik. That sword, there's no way I wouldn't recognize it. Before stepping onto the platform, I had seen it hanging at the waist of a soldier in the corner. And now, right before my eyes, Cho Sehui drew that very sword. It was undoubtedly the sword I had given to Jin Soyop. What more needed to be said? Sir, please calm down. Ignoring him, I swung my sword. Cho Sehui, true to his status as a martial artist of the 5 banners form, furrowed his brows slightly and casually twisted his body to the side to avoid my strike. My sword, which had been slicing through empty air, abruptly stopped midway. At the same time, Cho Sehui's eyes twitched. Slash! In an instant, my sword slashed across the front of his robe. Impressive, he muttered. His feet dug into the ground as he rapidly widened the distance between us. Standing far back, he looked at me and asked, Where is Jin Soyop? I don't know what you're talking about. That sword? I gave that sword to Jin Soyop. And yet you're playing dumb? I shifted my gaze to the side. Han Murin had already subdued the man I had pointed out. His cultivation level was only at the entry chi realm, the second level of the spirit ascension stage. For Han Murin, who was at the root heaven stage, failing to subdue him would have been more ridiculous. Seeing this, Cho Sehui furrowed his brow deeper. I should clarify to prevent any misunderstandings. I purchased this sword from a market stall. What a joke. It's been 4 days since those 2 were attacked. In just 4 days, the perpetrator sold the sword and you conveniently bought it. Do you really think that's plausible? Well, regardless, I have nothing to do with it. Denying it was his choice, and it was my choice to reveal the truth. Without another word, I pushed off the ground and swung my sword. The sword cut through the air like a wolf howling at the moon. 1,000-kill wolf star technique. Moonlight howl. Cho Sehui started to turn his body to the side to evade, but as if he had seen it somewhere before, he stomped his foot down hard. His body shot backward, and the energy imbued in my sword exploded midair. Boom! Cho Sehui's brow was tightly furrowed. I was no longer smiling. Once again, I pushed off the ground and swung my sword. This time, Cho Sehui raised his sword as well. Clang! The blades collided in midair. Cho Sehui didn't budge, but I was pushed slightly to the side. No surprise there. Even though I had reached the 5-dragon blooming star, my opponent was still at the 5 banners form. Whether he was newly promoted to the 5 banners form or not was irrelevant. The fact that he had reached it mattered more. The gap in strength was undeniable. I immediately twisted my body, swinging my leg around. Cho Sehui leaned his head back. Then his sword came swinging toward me. It wasn't aimed to kill. It was meant to subdue. So I pushed my body forward. Slash! His sword slashed across my shoulder. Blood sprayed through the air, and amidst the scattering drops, I reversed my grip and swung again. 1,000-kill wolf star technique, frigid stars piercing sky. My power, now more consolidated since reaching the 5-dragon blooming star, focused on a single point. Watching this, Cho Sehui furrowed his brow and once again retreated. My sword cleaved through the air and struck the ground. Boom, the force of my energy erupted from the ground, scattering dust and debris. Frigid stars piercing sky. This was the final technique of the 1,000-kill wolf star technique and its essence. I let my sword hang loosely at my side. So Jin Soyop and Baek Myeonggik managed to put up some resistance after all. How did their frigid stars piercing sky fare? Was it threatening? Cho Sehui remained silent. That was the right choice. In a battle between martial artists to determine the stronger, the decisive factor was the level of cultivation. You could never overlook the disparity in cultivation levels. And the next critical factor was the quality of martial arts. Even if someone with unparalleled martial arts had yet to fully master it, the title unparalleled wasn't given lightly. Martial arts could create openings. There was a stark difference between high-grade and low-grade techniques in terms of the martial principles they contained. They went to great lengths to leave no traces. No hair strands, no footprints, and not even a hint of martial arts. But now, seeing your reaction, I think I understand. Cho Sehui's expression hardened. So, against the techniques of 2-root heaven martial artists, did you have to desperately defend yourself? Still, Cho Sehui said nothing. If he had any sense of shame or realization of the mistake he had just made, keeping his mouth shut was the best option. I saw 2 deeply embedded footprints. They weren't from a footwork technique. They were the traces left when a 5-banners form martial artist gathers all their internal energy in an instant to move their body. You managed to evade both of their frigid stars piercing sky. No matter how much they were only root heaven martial artists, their techniques were of heavenly caliber. If you had to defend against their lethal strikes, traces would have been left behind. Cho Sehui swallowed nervously. After that, you pierced Baek Myeonggik's dantian and kicked him in the solar plexus. That's how Baek Myeonggik fell off the cliff, while Jin Soyop, who was in relatively better condition, was thrown off as well. I hadn't seen the scene myself, but I could piece together what happened. Ordinarily, a root heaven martial artist could survive such a fall. Especially Baek Myeonggik, who had been tirelessly training in the mind technique I taught him. He could have driven his hand into the cliffside or struck it to minimize the impact and land safely. Jin Soyop was thrown. He broke branches on the way down, managing to land. Baek Myeonggik, unable to react, crashed to the ground head first. That's why his body was in such a horrendous state. Anything more to say? I don't know anything. Fine. Understood. There was no point in continuing this conversation. I retracted the internal energy I had gathered and drew it back into my body. And then I converted it into the Hyoyon energy. My dantian writhed and my blood vessels tightened as if preparing for the impending shock. My eyes flashed. Mercilessly, I swung my sword, heaven-defying sword of desolation, sword of the vast heavens. Cho Sehui's eyes widened. He belatedly gathered his internal energy and gripped his sword tightly with both hands, raising it to block. SHHK? Both of his arms, still clutching the sword, fell to the ground. Thud. The sound shattered the silence of the Hanbingsek's main hall. Ah! His eyes, wide in disbelief, stared at me as I tossed the sword in my hand. Thuck! It pierced cleanly through his dantian. This time he let out a blood-curdling scream. I silently approached him and pressed my foot against his neck. Is Jin Soyop still alive? Cuck, he's dead. Where's the body? I didn't expect you to spill so easily, but I also didn't expect you to be this stubborn. I drew the dagger from my waist and drove it into his right eye. Thuck, Kaya, I'll ask again, where is Jin Soyop's body? But Cho Sehui kept his mouth firmly shut as if to say he would never tell. That was fine. It was really fine. I never expected to get it out of him easily anyway. And I had encountered plenty of bastards like him before. Han Murin, bring that guy here. The response came from somewhere else. You bastard, stop it at once. It was Jin Yongj, who had been silently observing the situation. I turned my head to see Jin Yongj glaring at me, his face twisted with fury. His chi, having reached the spirit ascension stage, surged out with overwhelming force, but I spoke briefly. Are you involved in this? What? I believe I already told you. If you're involved, I'll annihilate the Hanbing sect. You dare keep spouting such reckless threats. Do you know anything about the 1,000-kill wolf star technique and the heavenly image heart technique of Hanchial? And heavenly image, heart technique? Judging by his expression, he clearly had no idea. But there was no need to say more. There was still much I could squeeze out of the Hanbing sect, so I kept it brief. As a descendant of the extreme north, I am interrogating the one who assassinated one of our own. You should learn to distinguish when to interfere and when to stay silent. Even though I spoke relatively courteously, Jin Yang showed no signs of backing down. It didn't matter. Chief Steward Xiang. Yes, young master. From now on, anyone who interferes with what I'm about to do, regardless of who they are, cut off their head on the spot. At those words, Chief Steward Xiang calmly looked at me. Number NOVYELIGHT number, while the people around us started to wear expressions of utter disbelief. And that reaction was to be expected. To them, Chief Steward Xiang was just an ordinary man. Chief Steward Xiang looked at me and spoke. Are you serious? I am. Chief Steward Xiang scratched his head, releasing a deep sigh. Remember what we talked about back then? That. You know that. The commander. At those words, I couldn't help but smirk. Chief Steward Xiang was afraid of the commander's wrath. Back then, he had said he might get beaten to death. I'll repeat what I said back then. If anyone dares to harm Chief Steward Xiang, they will have to deal with me first. And if Chief Steward Xiang dies, I will hunt down the killer to the ends of the world and slaughter every single one of their bloodline, be it the commander or anyone else. You're insane. All right, I really don't know anything. I turned my head, and behind me, boom, the aura of a martial artist who had reached the spirit ascension stage erupted violently. Then I heard Chief Steward Xiang's voice. This is Xiang Yangho of the White Snow Phantom Corps. Xiaolin, one of the descendants of the extreme north, is carrying out a legitimate interrogation under justified circumstances. No one else is to interfere from this point on. His voice was deeper and heavier than before, but it wasn't unpleasant to hear. If anyone does interfere, no matter who they are, they will die today. White Snow Phantom Corps. The moment those words left his mouth, gasps echoed throughout the room. There are countless military factions under Xiaolgung, with hundreds of sects affiliated with it. But the power that truly supports the core of the everlasting Snow Palace comes down to just two forces: the White Phantom Guard and the White Snow Phantom Corps. The White Phantom Guard is the elite combat unit of Xiaolgung, operating openly. But the White Snow Phantom Corps is different. They operate strictly in the shadows, not only protecting the descendants of the extreme north, but also infiltrating every corner of the Central Plains. Their identities are strictly confidential, to the extent that even the members themselves do not know each other's identities. That is the organization Chief Steward Xiang belongs to, the White Snow Phantom Corps. I lowered my gaze. Unbothered by the commotion, Han Murin had already brought the martial artist he had subdued earlier before me. Without a moment's hesitation, I grabbed the man by the hair and severed his right arm. Slash. The sound echoed throughout the hall and the man screamed in agony, but a louder voice drowned out his cries. No, stop! It was Cho Sehui. You seem to care about him. Is he your son? Yes, he's my son. I see. I placed the edge of my sword against the man's right leg. So I'll ask again, where is Jin Soyop's body? ... It's. Seeing his hesitation, I pressed the blade slightly into the man's leg and Cho Sehui shouted. I'll tell you. I stared at him blankly and he continued. The back mountain. I buried him in the back mountain. There are more than a few back mountains around here, be specific. The entrance to Hanjiang Mountain. There are two gravestones facing each other. I buried him behind the left gravestone. Did you torture him? Yes. Why? I coveted his martial arts. Did Jin Soyop say anything? No. He bit his own tongue and burst his heart. I brushed my hair back. I had never told anyone this before. The heavenly image heart technique is undoubtedly a cultivation method meant for ascension. And when I created it, I embedded a specific mechanism in it. Anyone who practices the heavenly image heart technique emits a unique scent. Only I can detect it. Cho Sehui didn't have that scent. And neither did his son, who was lying here now. It seems that Jin Soyop was far more resolute than I had anticipated. That was enough. I raised my sword and slashed Cho Sehui's son's neck in one clean stroke. Slash. No, I tossed the lifeless body aside like garbage and crouched down in front of Cho Sehui. Are you sad? You son of a beach. If you're sad, it's too soon for that. Han Murin. Yes, Xiaolin. Are you skilled in torture? He flashed a sinister grin. It's not something I'd normally boast about, but yes, I know a thing or two. I was thinking of sharing some advanced techniques in torture. Are you interested in learning? Han Murin seemed genuinely amused by the whole situation. Of course. Good, stop the bleeding and bring him to me. What about that corpse over there? Leave it where it is. I briefly turned my head to look at Jin Yang. Anything to say? What exactly do you want me to say? I thought at the very least you'd thank me. What? Thank you. I just took care of a filthy insect within the Hanbing sect. Shouldn't you be grateful? You. What are you trying to say? It seems you've already forgotten what I told you earlier. I spoke about the race between truth and lies, and yet here you are still not getting it. Cho Sehui was a very important figure. He was in Yangnyong and had close ties with Jiang Mugwi, the governor there, as well as connections with the four major sects. What would come out of his mouth next? That wasn't up to him. It was up to me. In a world where even if someone died without speaking, as long as I said they had spoken, that would become the truth. In an instant, the blood drained from Jin Yang's face. "Uncle," I said in a soft voice, hands clasped behind my back. "I'll count to 5. Within that time, you will do exactly what I expect of you. If not within the next 4 days, the Hanbing sect will be wiped from existence." I began to count, my voice low and calm. 1, what I was about to do next was entirely up to me, and what Jin Yang imagined was entirely up to him. 2, I gave the Hanbing sect plenty of chances. I gave Xiao Unhi a chance too. I kept giving them chances. I wasn't the one who threw them away. Public humiliation, I could tolerate it if I had to. Being criticized for my mistakes, as irritating as it was to hear excuses without any acknowledgement of wrongdoing, I could still tolerate that too. However, a blatant lack of respect for authority was hard to endure, and acting as if they were above the descendants of the extreme north was even harder to stomach. I closed my eyes slowly. 3. I said it, and then opened my eyes. Jin Yang was right in front of me. With a voice full of suppressed rage, he spoke to me. "I apologize," I sneered. 4. I said I apologize. Is that what passes for an apology these days? An apology must be delivered with utmost sincerity. What you just said wasn't an apology. You're still clinging to that empty sense of authority. Let's just forget about it. There was no need to count to 5. I was about to turn around when thud. Jin Yang fell to his knees in front of me. Then he pressed his right arm to the ground, then his left. Finally, he lowered his head until it touched the ground. A full prostration. I committed a grave offense against a descendant of the extreme north. Please, I beg your forgiveness. This was it. This was what an apology was supposed to look like. I raised my foot and pressed it down on Jin Yang's head. "Uncle, yes. As I've said before, debts and grudges are extremely important. You're quite old, and yet you keep showing me how clueless you are about distinguishing right from wrong. It pains me to see it. So, please don't let this happen again, and today, because of you, I wasted a considerable amount of time. You'll have to compensate me for that." "I will. The Hanbing sect must have plenty of medicinal resources. I'll be taking some of those, along with a few spiritual pills. You're also known for your weapon crafting techniques, so I assume you have some decent swords and daggers. I'll be taking a few of those as well. Do as you please." I lifted my foot and crouched down beside him. "This is your last chance. I won't give you another." I reached out, grabbed a fistful of his hair, and pulled his head up. Then I leaned in close and whispered into his ear in a low, chilling voice. "If you ever crawl up to me again, I will kill you. I promise you, I will inflict upon you a pain beyond anything you could ever imagine. The Hanbing sect will be reduced to ashes. Every single one of the bastards under you will be slaughtered, including your daughter, who will become my 3rd wife. Not just her, but every single one of your ancestors, every single one of your descendants. They will all die." I tightened my grip. "And I promise you this as well. They will die writhing in agony. You will watch every single one of them suffer and die, and all of their resentment will be directed at you. And you will be the very last one to die. So before you do anything, you had better think it through very carefully." Jin Yang began to tremble. His eyes started to turn bloodshot. Not out of fear, not out of sorrow, out of sheer, uncontrollable rage. I ignored it. A worm like him, no matter how much he seethed, couldn't touch me. "This is your one and only chance, a chance you will never get again in your entire life. If you understand, nod." Jin Yang slowly nodded. That was enough. I shoved his face to the side and stood up. I had no more time to waste on this garbage. I had to recover Jin Soyop's body. Chief Steward Xiang spoke up. "I'm a bit worried. Are you really going to be okay?" I chuckled. "You worry too much. Even if they can't let this slide due to internal regulations, no punishment will fall on you personally." "That's not what I meant." "Oh, then what else is there to worry about?" "There is." Chief Steward Xiang pointed to my chest. "That haul you took from the warehouse. Are you sure that's all right?" What's the problem? Well, wouldn't it be a problem for the Hanbing sect? Jin Yang probably didn't expect you to take that much. I understood why he was saying this. I had told Jin Yang that I would only take a few spiritual pills, some resources, a couple of swords, and a few daggers. And that's what I did. Except I took every single spiritual pill in the warehouse, as well as every valuable resource. I took 15 swords and 40 daggers. Like I said earlier, the one pulling the strings behind the 4 great sects is the Hanbing sect. They promised to clean up after the job if the 4 great sects managed to kill you. And if you died, they would destroy those sects themselves and erase all traces of their involvement. Is that right? That's what he said. And I told Jin Yang that if he handed over Cho Sehui, I'd consider the matter settled. But he rejected that offer, expecting a better offer than the initial one is pure delusion. What more is there to say? Chief Steward Xiang then asked with a genuinely curious expression. Were you really going to settle it? I nodded. I really was going to settle it. The Hanbing sect still held some value to the everlasting Snow Palace. Their weapon crafting techniques were a major asset to the Snow Mountain. There was no need to explain that further. But unfortunately, their mindset was severely flawed, so I decided to correct it. That level of humiliation you inflicted on him just now, don't you think he might try something behind your back? If he does, I'll wipe them out. Will you kill the 3rd wife as well? She's Unwi, not my mother, is she? That's true. I looked at Chief Steward Xiang. He was asking too many questions, and the direction of those questions was inconsistent, which meant that whatever was truly bothering him was something else entirely, and it wasn't hard to figure out what it was. I erased Xiaogang from the world with my own hands. Is that what's been bothering you? Chief Steward Xiang's eyes widened. His mouth opened and closed repeatedly as if trying to speak but failing. The sight was almost laughable. You're like a ghost, truly. If it wasn't for that, there'd be no reason for you to ask these kinds of questions. Is that so? At least that's how it seems to me. I'll say it again, I have no intention of annihilating Xiaogang with my own hands, so stop worrying about it needlessly. I always trust you, young master, you know that, right? I nodded. We had already recovered Jin Soyop's corpse and completed his funeral. And now, though I hadn't said anything, the one holding the reins was Han Murin. It took a day to travel from Hanbing sect to the main palace. I looked outside. Judging by the landscape, we would be arriving at the main palace soon. So, what have you been writing so diligently? Ever since we left Hanbing sect, I had been holed up in the carriage, writing continuously. I closed the manuscript and handed it to Chief Steward Xiang. He stared at the title I had scrawled on the cover, muttering under his breath. Record of Eternal Torture. Is this? Care to take a look inside? May I? I nodded. Chief Steward Xiang opened the first page and began reading rapidly. Novelight, in the blink of an eye, he had reached the last page, closing the manuscript with a shocked expression. What is this? It's a compilation of the most essential torture techniques I've mastered in my life. Young master, was it really necessary to write this down? Why not just burn it? Reason? Chief Steward Xiang glanced around. The carriage was spacious, with a considerable distance between the driver's seat and the interior. Our conversation couldn't be overheard outside. More importantly, Chief Steward Xiang, who was in the spirit ascension stage, had set up a sound barrier. If anyone could hear us, that would be the real anomaly. If this falls into someone else's hands, you'll be branded a demonic fiend instantly. That's how it seems to you? You know it is. Not just any fiend either, a grand fiend. These torture techniques. Even the Imperial Palace's torture experts would be astounded. His reaction was to be expected. The record of eternal torture contained a total of 5 torture techniques. The first was the point pulse sealing art. This technique involved sequentially sealing the acupoints, causing excruciating pain throughout the entire body while still allowing the victim to breathe. With each acupoint sealed, the pain intensified. It was a basic technique that could be performed even with minimal internal energy. The second was the joint dislocation art. It was a method of inflicting extreme pain by twisting the joints without actually breaking the bones. The key was to maintain control over the joints using internal energy and ensure there were no lasting injuries. It was based on the principles of bone setting and could also be executed with basic internal energy. The third was the living bone fusion art. Now, this was where things got serious. By injecting internal energy between the bones and flesh, the victim would feel as if their flesh was being torn away from their bones, though in reality, it wasn't. Precision control of internal energy was crucial, and at least the level of the flame mastery stage was required to fully manifest its effects. The fourth was the 10,000 agonies art. This technique stimulated the nerves throughout the body, gradually increasing the intensity of the pain while keeping the victim fully conscious. Despite being executable with basic internal energy, it was an advanced technique. The higher the user's cultivation level, the more precisely they could control the flow of energy, amplifying the pain inflicted on the nerves. If done without care, the victim could be reduced to a mindless shell. After countless trial and error, I devised 5 new pathways to inflict pain without causing brain damage. And the fifth, the most critical technique, the reverse heart pulse art. This technique involved reversing the flow of internal energy through the meridians, sending waves of searing pain throughout the entire body. It inflicted no lasting internal damage, but delivered unbearable agony. If one were to unleash its full power, the pain level would surpass that of the previous 4 techniques combined, by dozens of times. In my previous life, I perfected these techniques through years of practice on the 2 men who deserved to die, but whom I kept alive solely for my own training. As an aside, not even the Grand Elder of the Martial Alliance could endure the reverse heart pulse art without drooling and begging for death. Chief Steward Xiang. Yes, you said just now that you trust me, didn't you? Then why do you look so worried? How can I not be? I may not know exactly what kind of life you've lived, but this is extremely dangerous, and if you intend to teach this to Han Murin, I have to stop you. Why? You know why, I crossed my legs casually. When you think about it, Xialep was a city full of all sorts of people. That's because of the region's special nature. He was right. The region's unique characteristics couldn't be ignored. Unyielding had distanced herself from the Namgung clan, moving as far away from the central plains as possible, but not too far. Thus, she chose Xialep, the most remote area under the jurisdiction of Everlasting Snow Palace. Jin Soyop and Beek Myongik were the same. Both had military backgrounds and were not direct disciples of Xianxia sect, but they were still descendants of its students. Although I didn't know all the details, I was fairly certain that at least half of those who had joined Xialep Bunter in recent years were people hiding their pasts. Which was why it's not so unusual to have someone from the Palace of Demon Flames of Chaos in Xialep. Not unusual. Young Master, we're talking about the Palace of Demon Flames of Chaos, one of the 4 demon outer sects. The 4 demon outer sects referred to the Palace of Demon Flames of Chaos, the Black Sky Demon Prison Palace, the Celestial Demon Shadow Sect, and the Heart Demon Path Sect. These sects were independent demonic factions, not under the control of the Central Blood Sect. While their power did not surpass that of the Central Blood Sect, they were still formidable enough to be referred to as the 4 demon outer sects. At that moment, the carriage finally came to a stop. Chief Steward Xiang. Yes, young master. Release the sound barrier. Without another word, Chief Steward Xiang dispelled the sound barrier. Now, let's hear what you have to say. Han Murin. Yes, Hyun Xialan Nim. Come inside. A moment later, Han Murin stepped into the carriage. I need to ask you something. Are you a direct descendant? What? Are you a direct descendant of the Palace of Demon Flames of Chaos? So you really knew. Just answer the question. Han Murin scratched his head, his voice dropping to a subdued tone. I'm not a bloodline descendant, not even an illegitimate one. But you know the flowing shadow of returning flames technique. And from what I can see, you also know the demon flame heart art. You're intentionally not condensing the demonic flames within your body. Is that a conscious choice? Han Murin's expression was blank, as if he couldn't grasp the situation. He must have suspected that his identity had been discovered to some extent, but he certainly hadn't expected it to be this thorough. How do you know all this? I've never condensed demonic flames, and there's never been a single trace of soot left in my footprints. The martial arts system of the Palace of Demon Flames of Chaos was simple. The demon flame heart art was a technique that condensed demonic flames within the body. It transformed the practitioner's inner energy into black flames, circulating them through the entire meridian system until the flames became an intrinsic part of the practitioner. Once that was achieved, using the flowing shadow of returning flames technique would leave traces of black soot with every step. That was only the beginning. When the demonic flames ignited beneath one's feet, the speed would increase exponentially and then increase again. The technique allowed for abrupt directional changes and even movement through the air. In ancient times, it was said to be comparable to the renowned dragon ascending 8 steps technique of the long-extinct Kunlun sect. Its defining characteristic was the creation of lingering afterimages. So, what's your answer? As I said, I'm not a bloodline descendant, not even an illegitimate one. I'm the youngest son of the former vice sect leader, Dong Yuxiang. My expression shifted slightly. The former vice sect leader, Dong Yuxiang. The Blood Shadow Divine Lord? Yes, I knew that name. And from the look on Chief Steward Xiang's face, he knew far more than I did. Heh! Are you talking about the Blood Shadow Divine Lord who was executed for inciting a rebellion in the Palace of Demon Flames of Chaos about 20 years ago? It was a false accusation, but yes, that's correct. Chief Steward Xiang's expression grew somber as he met my gaze, silently pleading, "Please, just get rid of him. Please, young master, just cast him out. This is dangerous," but all I did was smile. Why the surname Han? My mother's surname was Han. And your mother? She's dead, killed by the pursuit squad from the Palace of Demon Flames of Chaos. Yes, so you changed your surname to Han and came to Sialep to survive. That's right. So what's your ultimate goal? Without a moment's hesitation, Han Murin answered. To eradicate the Palace of Demon Flames of Chaos. Chief Steward Xiang let out a long, heavy sigh while I chuckled softly. Now it made sense. Then you'll have to work harder. Someone with ambitions to wipe out the Palace of Demon Flames of Chaos can't just be lingering at the root heaven stage. May I ask you something? Go ahead. Do you really intend to keep me by your side? At that, I tilted my head slightly. Why wouldn't I? It's the Palace of Demon Flames of Chaos. Among the 4 demon outer sects, they have the greatest power. They may not rival the Central Blood Sect, but they're strong enough to go toe-to-toe with 2 of its branches simultaneously. And so? Han Murin seemed at a loss for words, letting out a hollow laugh. I decided to recite something I'd once heard. In all things there is cause and effect. Joy and suffering arise from fate, and all good and ill fortune stem from past karma. Even if something exists now, once fate is exhausted, it will disappear. So do not rejoice in what you have, nor grieve for what you have lost. All things follow the path of fate. Upon hearing those words, Han Murin's eyes widened. You're not a Buddhist, yet you speak of Buddhist teachings as if you believe in them. What does it matter if it's Buddhist, demonic, or otherwise? Truth is truth. Han Murin's expression was complicated. Then he knelt down on the spot. Sialep was a place I fled to when I had nowhere else to go. I remained silent, listening. I never thought I'd find such a connection there. I'm a man being hunted by the Palace of Demon Flames of Chaos. If they ever catch wind of me, at that time, please abandon me. If I intended to abandon you, I wouldn't have taken you in to begin with. Han N-O-V-Y-L Cyrillic letter 456G Cyrillic letter 4BBT, official version. Murin lifted his head. Back then, do you remember? Which time are you referring to? When you hunted down the ones who betrayed me and fled from Sialep? Yes. From that moment on, you became mine. Even if the entire world turns against you, I will remain by your side. Isn't that the true essence of a master-servant bond? Han Murin's eyes trembled violently. So, don't doubt me. And don't fear. Hyun Sialanim, I stood up from my seat. From now on, embrace the demonic flames, and within the next 15 days, ascend to the flame mastery stage. Understood. I glanced at Chief Steward Xiang, who looked as though he had given up halfway. There's a book containing the 5 torture techniques. It's in Chief Steward Xiang's possession. While I'm gone, practice on Cho Sehui. Han Murin, now resolute, looked at me and asked, if there's anything specific I need to hear, please tell me now. I smiled. One thing I had noticed about Han Murin from the beginning, he was exceptionally quick-witted. Draft a confession. In it, state that Jin Yangj of Hanbing sect has been manipulating Yangyong from behind the scenes for the past 6 years to restrain me, and that recently, he attempted to assassinate me. Make it align with that narrative. Does the format matter? No, just make sure the handwriting matches his, and if he dies before you can finish, mimic it as best you can and prepare at least one version. Understood. I opened the carriage door and stepped outside. The air was refreshingly crisp. Inside the office of the main palace, Xiao Yongchen gazed at his son with a complex expression. What had changed that child so drastically? How could a person transform so completely in such a short time? He had eradicated the 4 prominent sects of Yangyong, killed the prefect, and even managed to clean up the aftermath almost perfectly. Yangyong was now, without question, part of Xiaogeng's domain. There were certainly many people around Unwi. Just nearby, there was a member of the White Snow Phantom Corps. That man was at the Spirit Ascension stage, so if he stepped in, dealing with everything wouldn't have been difficult. But he hadn't intervened. In fact, he had done almost nothing. It was all Unwi. The world was abuzz with rumors that the main palace had intervened, but only Xianxia and Unwi knew that wasn't true. Despite his intense curiosity about what had truly caused his son to change so drastically, Xianxia didn't ask. He believed that when the time came, his son would speak on his own. Xianxia himself had prayed for Unwi's transformation, subjecting him to trial after trial. If he were to suddenly demand an explanation now, disregarding tradition and pressing for answers, he would not only fail as a father but as the palace lord of Xianxia. He opened his mouth to speak. He wanted to say, "You've worked hard." He wanted to tell Unwi that he would now show him the manuscript of 10,000 Snows, as promised, and that the everlasting fire lily, which they had paid the murderous soul sect of the great desert to procure, would take at least another month to arrive. But Unwi spoke first. "I have returned through time." If anyone in the palace had seen Xianxia's current expression, they would have thought they were dreaming, and they wouldn't have been wrong to think so. Xianxia opened his mouth to speak, then closed it again. He opened it a second time, then closed it once more. Frankly speaking, Xianxia's face looked like that of a man who had just lost his sanity. After a long, tense silence, Xianxia finally managed to ask a single question. "How? I don't know the details myself." "You don't? No. Yes, just before I died, I sliced through the everlasting snow mountain." Again, Xianxia's eyes widened. Cutting through the everlasting snow mountain. That was no light statement. The everlasting snow mountain was an unfathomable structure, a mountain so massive that it could not be accurately measured by human standards. Its height stretched tens of thousands of feet. From its peak, one could see half of the central plains. To say he had cut it in half meant that his martial power had reached the heavens. "Go on. I cut through the mountain and was swept away by the resulting avalanche. That's how I died." "That can't be all." "You're right. Just before my last breath, something embedded itself in my heart. I couldn't tell what color it was, but it was about the size of a fingertip, a stone or perhaps a gem." "A divine artifact, then?" "Yes." "Do you have any idea what it could have been?" Xianxia was silent for a long time. Then he pulled over a nearby chair and sat down, speaking in a calm, quiet voice. "The everlasting snow mountain holds the secrets of the heavens. Men seek the heavens, but they do not know where to find them. The true meaning is hidden within the white snow." The poem was cryptic. "Is that a poem you wrote, Father?" "As if I could write something like that." Xianxia's expression grew even more complicated as he spoke. "It was written by Xianxia, the founder of Everlasting Snow Palace." Xianxia, a truly remarkable man. Originally from North Sea Ice Palace, he had walked the demonic path, then betrayed the palace, destroyed it, and conquered the everlasting snow mountain that the Ice Palace had never managed to subdue. He was the first to discover and harness the mountain's mystical energy, creating the ice and snow martial art that would become the foundation of the manuscript of 10,000 Snows. Whatever that gem was, it's undoubtedly the secret alluded to in the poem left behind by our ancestor. Xianxia's expression was one of profound relief. So that's what he meant by secrets of the heavens. He wasn't talking about the mountain itself, but about a hidden treasure containing a true secret. Unwi silently watched Xianxia. The man's turbulent emotions settled quickly, as befitted the one called the absolute monarch of ice and snow. But that was as far as it went. Unwi still had a question to ask. "How long has it been?" Xianxia's eyes glimmered. "If you're asking how long we've been searching for that legend, it's been 12 years. 12 years. A long time if it's long, and a short time if it's short. It's not a long time to secure Xianxia's future glory. It's more than enough time to bring Xianxia to complete ruin." Xianxia fell silent. Unwi, too, said nothing more. As I had repeatedly mentioned, in my past life, Xianxia had been preoccupied with something. That's why the rebel forces in Xianxia, led by Xianxia and his ilk, managed to topple Xianxia. Of course, Xianxia's severe internal injuries from a martial deviation were a contributing factor, but that was merely part of the process. The root of it all had started around this time, or perhaps it had begun even earlier. The legend left behind by the first palace lord of Xianxia. Do you believe that the path to absolute oneness lies within that place? I am certain of it, even now. Now it's my turn to ask. Everything you've told me so far are things that should have remained hidden. Why are you revealing them now? Because you're my father. I thought you'd be curious. Was I wrong? You're right, I was curious, but I didn't ask. I believed that you would tell me one day. That day is today. I see. There's one thing I'm curious about. You can ask as many things as you'd like. Xianxia shook his head, just one. What became of Everlasting Snow Palace? It was annihilated. By whom? By me. This might cause some misunderstanding, so allow me to clarify two things. Go ahead. Everlasting Snow Palace deserved to be destroyed. At least it was not the future of Xiaogang that you desired. HMPH, don't tell me they were devouring people or something. They weren't just devouring people. Everlasting Snow Palace had become the epicenter of demonic arts to the extent that the current Central Blood sect couldn't even compare. What is the second thing you wanted to tell me? It's less of a statement and more of a question. A question. Go ahead. Unwi glanced around for a moment, then asked in a calm voice, What do you truly desire, Father? Stability. Unwi's expression shifted slightly, as if the answer was unexpected. Stability. You know what is necessary to achieve stability, don't you? I do. Power. Everlasting Snow Palace as it is now is lacking. I won't deny that. Then that's enough. Xianxia tilted his head, puzzled. That's it. Yes. The first step to solving any problem is recognizing that there is one. You know what the problem is, and I know what the second and third steps are. Tell me, what are the second and third steps? The second step is identifying the cause. The third step is acquiring the power to protect. Interest sparked in Xianxia's eyes. If what Unwi said next was what Xianxia hoped to hear, he would finally be able to smile from the depths of his heart. I will protect Everlasting Snow Palace. Xianxia's chest heaved. Among the descendants of the extreme north, not a single one had ever said such a thing. They all knew it, that not only were they incapable of carrying the weight of Everlasting Snow Palace, but they could barely protect it as it was now. Xianxia had always thought of it as a confidence issue. Only one person, Unwi, had not. Regardless of whether he had regressed, regardless of what he had experienced in his past life, those words that Unwi had just spoken were what Xianxia had always wanted to hear from his children. Xianxia smiled, brightly. Good. I'm glad you're pleased. Xianxia looked at Unwi with a complicated expression. There were honestly so many things he wanted to ask, but he was trying to restrain himself. But the future of Everlasting Snow Palace weighed heavily on his mind, so he had asked about that. And now, as the conversation continued, even more questions surfaced. And Unwi, perceptive as ever, caught onto that immediately. See, that's why I said you could ask as many questions as you want. There are a few things I can guess at. I'll tell you about them. After I left the Everlasting Snow Mountain, I entered a hidden realm that Chief Steward Xiang had told me about. At the time, I didn't know it, but it must have been a place you had directed me to. In that place, I gained martial arts and found the will to keep moving forward. I directed you to a hidden realm? Yes, go on. About 10 years later, the Central Blood Sect contacted me. The Central Blood Sect. Yes. To be precise, they saved my life. And from that day forward, I entered the Central Blood Sect and carried out all sorts of tasks for them. My son, a member of the Central Blood Sect, life truly is unpredictable. I agree. After another 20 years, I became the Central Blood Sect's Blood Heaven Executioner. To correct the heavens of the Blood Sect, that explains why you knew the Blood Demon Vaulting Heaven technique. Yes, and I also reached the level that you once dreamed of. Don't tell me. Yes, I reached absolute oneness. Xianxia's eyes widened. As time passed, I could no longer find a reason to keep living. That's why I came to the ruins of Everlasting Snow Palace. You fool. Foolish, pathetic, and downright stupid. But you're still my son. A faint smile spread across Unwi's lips. That's exactly what I thought you would say. I'm amazed. There must be many things you're leaving out of your story. Yes, there are many. I'm curious, but I won't ask about them. Xianxia wasn't a fool. The past that Unwi walked and the future that Unwi had crafted were his own making. If Xianxia were to learn about it now and intervene prematurely, it could lead to unforeseen consequences. Moreover, Unwi would lose his ability to predict the future. If a father truly wished to protect his child, then Xianxia was setting the perfect example of how to do it. By the way, Hyunsum has been trying to get closer to me lately. Yes, I heard that he learned a few things from you. That's right. Xianxia chuckled softly. Hyunsum is not a man who can be simply labeled as a loyalist. You know that, don't you? I do. I probably know it better than you do, father. And Yang Xiaoljin, Unwi didn't answer. You don't trust him, do you? No. Then what would you have me do? Unwi answered without hesitation. Nothing. What? There's something I need to uncover. You must not kill him, and you must not show any sign that you suspect him. But he'll notice the shift in atmosphere. That much is fine. Do you trust me? Without the slightest pause, Xianxia replied. I trust you, then trust my judgment as well. Very well. And then, it's time for you to keep your promise, father. Of course. Xianxia reached into his robes and pulled out a thick book and a wooden box, placing them both on the table. The complete compendium of everlasting snow and the 100-year flower. When Unwi looked up, his expression demanding further explanation, Xianxia responded briefly. I've made a deal with the Silent Soul sect. The scheduled date is a month from now. On that day, we'll receive the 100-year flower. The 100-year flower was exceptionally rare. There were only a few left in the entire Murim, and those who possessed them wouldn't easily part with them. Unwi hadn't expected them to be able to obtain it in just a few days. Who do you plan to send? I intend to send Hyunsum. Unwi, who had been lost in thought, shook his head. Don't send him. Why not? It's too dangerous. Dangerous, you say? Wouldn't it be better to make the Silent Soul sect deliver it themselves? You know that the sect master of the Silent Soul sect, Unyielding, is a cautious man. If we want him to come here himself, we need to show him a dead fish and then toss him a piece of fresh meat to bite down on. Do we have such fresh meat? We do. And if the Unyielding I know is the same as before, he will undoubtedly come here himself. After saying that, Unwi picked up a brush and a sheet of paper lying on the side of the office. He began writing something. Xianxia watched him closely, and once again his eyes widened. This. Yes, if Unyielding sees this, he'll come running with the 100-year flower in hand. Xianxia stared at the contents in silence. He thought about saying that if it were a fake, things could escalate, but he didn't say it out loud. That was because in Xianxia's eyes, what was written there was absolutely real. You know quite a lot. There were many times when I thought it was useless knowledge, but after seeing how useful it has become, I might have to take some time to thoroughly review everything I remember from my past life. Ha! Xianxia let out a strange sigh. Unwi original source, shot him a glance, silently asking if he could take a look at the complete compendium of everlasting snow. Before Xianxia even nodded, Unwi was already flipping through it at an alarming speed. It looked as if he were just skimming, but that was far from the truth. The contents, their meanings, and their underlying essence, all of it was flooding into the mind of a man who once beheld the heavens. The text was being dissected, analyzed, and then dissected again. At some points, Unwi was so impressed that his mouth slightly parted in awe. In his past life, he had desperately wanted to read this book. But that fool xianxia had burned it all, dismissing it as relics of the past. All that remained were the fragments stored in his head, and Unwi had no intention of digging into the mind of that vermin. After all, a compendium of everlasting snow filtered through the mind of such scum would no longer be the same book Unwi had longed to possess. After about half an incense stick's time had passed, Unwi closed the book. It's excellent. That's all. Xianxia seemed to want a more elaborate, flattering response, but Unwi had nothing more to say. It truly was excellent. I've seen and learned countless martial arts techniques throughout my life. I even created new martial arts by extracting parts from the ones I liked. But this, I can't even fathom how to break it down. It's truly remarkable, a magnificent martial art. It might have sounded like a stingy compliment, but there was no higher praise from Unwi than that. Unwi seemed to be considering something for a moment before speaking up. There is something I'd like to give you. Xianxia reached out, and a stack of documents that had been lying in the corner flew into his hand. The air manipulation was so smooth and natural that Unwi didn't even bother to be impressed. At Xianxia's level, such feats were to be expected. Taking the documents, Unwi began to read them carefully. At a certain point in the text, Unwi's eyes stopped. That was when Xianxia's voice echoed in his ears. Your constitution is the Guangyul blood vessel. Unwi's head shot up. I did some research and investigated it thoroughly. Up to this point, only 3 people have been known to possess the Guangyul blood vessel, but every single one of them met a terrible end. My mother is one of them, isn't she? Yes, and from this I realized something. What did you realize? I realized your heart, father. I never thought there were many things in life that could move me. No, to be more accurate, I never considered the word emotion to hold much value. Xianxia silently gazed at Unwi. But I was wrong. Thank you, father. Xianxia smiled. Honestly, he still couldn't quite get used to this. But strangely enough, that made it even better. After all, Unwi was a son with limitless potential. However, what Unwi said next made Xianxia's eyes widen in shock. But unfortunately, 2 people have been left out. Two people, the heavenly Taoist, the cult leader of the blood sect, Xiao Yunchen blinked, and Gun Mudgel, the alliance leader of the Murim Alliance. No way. Yes. Those two were also born with the Guangqiu blood vessel. This statement could only mean one thing. So you already knew? Yes, I always knew I was different from others, but I didn't know exactly what it was. So I started digging into it. At present, Father, your cultivation level is at the grand void formless stage. You're almost at its peak. Xiao Yunchen quietly listened to his son's words. If it's you, you can handle Gun Mudgel, but against the heavenly Taoist you won't stand a chance. You're predicting certain defeat? Yes, it's hard for me to admit this, but the heavenly Taoist is a genius. Unwi continued, looking Xiao Yunchen straight in the eye. I'd like to ask you a favor. A favor? Yes. What Unwi did next was something Xiao Yunchen couldn't have predicted in his wildest dreams. A red gleam flickered in Xiao Unwi's eyes. It was a murderous aura so intense it was almost palpable. Xiao Yunchen was stunned by the sheer malice emanating from his son, who was supposedly only at the flame mastery stage. It wasn't that he felt threatened, but the bloodthirst was comparable to that of a master who had reached the heaven-earth stage or higher. And then, the energy flowing between Xiao Yunchen and Xiao Unwi suddenly evaporated. Wherever Unwi's bloodshot eyes focused, a path opened. It was a path that only Unwi could walk. A technique reserved solely for the cult leader, vice leader, and the designated successor of the central blood sect. Xiao Yunchen's face twisted in shock as he recognized the technique Unwi was displaying. When the bloodthirst in Unwi's eyes finally receded, Xiao Yunchen spoke. Blood domain imprisonment. Yes, blood domain imprisonment. It's classified as a top-tier god of war-level martial art. You even mastered that. I picked it up along the way. Now it was time to get to the point. As I read through the complete compendium of everlasting snow, I had an epiphany. An epiphany? Yes, I want to transform this blood domain imprisonment into a martial art unique to everlasting snow palace. Xiao Yunchen smiled at Unwi's words. Honestly, he was curious. Just how far had Unwi's martial arts skills reached? Even if his physical body was still developing, his martial arts, which once reached the heavens, would undoubtedly give Xiao Yunchen a glimpse of that overwhelming power. Honestly, even talking about it was thrilling. More than anything, Unwi had proposed creating a martial art. How could he refuse? All right, let's do it, but before that. Xiao Yunchen brought out the Bingchen Go board. Let's play a game. A rematch? Well, you know me, I can't stand losing, Unwi chuckled softly. Whenever I look at a Go board, I can't help but think of one thing. They say the advantage of the first move belongs to the black stone. Unwi looked down at the pristine, white Bingchen Go board and continued. Last time I played the first move. This time, Father, you go first. Without a moment of hesitation, Xiao Yunchen picked up a black stone. A soft click echoed as Xiao Yunchen placed his first stone on the board. There was no sound, but the weight of the move was palpable. Unwi stared at the board for a moment. His father's first move wasn't just a simple start, it was a test. The white stone hovered at Unwi's fingertips, and then, as if flowing naturally like water, it found its place on the board. The two of them began placing stones without hesitation. Click, 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 click. For a while, the only sounds in the room were the steady clicks of stones being placed on the board. At some point, Xiao Yunchen's eyes started to tremble. The last time he played Go with Unwi, every single move Unwi made had been extraordinary. At that time, Xiao Yunchen had been utterly crushed. Back then, he could have made excuses, saying his mind was distracted, that he wasn't fully focused. But now, there were no such excuses. Unwi's moves were relentless, as if he could see through every strategy Xiao Yunchen had in mind. Truly, he was exceptional. Xiao Yunchen, deep in thought, placed a black stone on the board and spoke. I heard about what happened at the Hanbing sect. You must have. Unwi's response was calm. His white stone was already moving to its next position. Xiao Yunchen couldn't hide his admiration as he watched Unwi's Go strategy. Every move was precise, as if calculated 1,000 years ahead. Whenever Xiao Yunchen attacked with the black stone, Unwi's white stone was already there, lying in wait. Whenever Xiao Yunchen defended, Unwi was already expanding the board to create a larger scheme. Xiao Yunchen continued in a measured tone. Do you think it was right to handle Jin Yang's that way? Father, Unwi spoke as he picked up a stone. They say in Go, once a stone is placed, it cannot be taken back. The same applies to me. I have no intention of taking back that move. Besides, I never place a stone without thinking it through. A smile formed on Xianxia's lips. He'd noticed it before, but Unwi's way of speaking had become so composed and resolute. It was still incredibly unfamiliar, but at the same time it felt reassuring. The stones moved back and forth again. Unwi's white stones moved as if they were alive. Every single move was calculated, and the flow was as smooth as a river. Xianxia was suddenly reminded that his son had once reached absolute oneness, Hanwon Dokjan. Your Go strategy, it's as if you're reading the heavens and earth. You're flattering me? It's not a compliment. I've played Go with many masters, but I've never encountered anyone who has grasped the Tao of Go as you have. Is this the difference between absolute oneness and grand void formlessness? Unwi shook his head. It's not a matter of cultivation levels, it's a difference in perspective. Perspective? With another soft click, Unwi's white stone found a flawless position. Xianxia felt his black stones being steadily cornered. If the Hanbing sect collapses, what will you do with the vacant seat? I have a substitute plan. Oh, may I hear it? Unwi hesitated for a moment. I think you might oppose it. Speak. The Viper Valley. Xianxia's hand froze midair. His eyes shifted from the Go board to Unwi. The look in Unwi's unwavering eyes told him he hadn't misheard. The Viper Valley. The very group that tried to create the ice venom corrosion poison? Yes. How can you possibly trust them? Unwi placed a white stone on the board. His move surrounded several of Xianxia's black stones. It's not about trust, it's about control. Control? If I give them what they desire most, they will bow their heads. And in return, I'll tighten their leash. Just like you did with the Hanbing sect? Yes, that's why I'm asking, do you oppose it? It's something to think about, but I don't object to wiping out the Hanbing sect. Unwi lifted his head. Xianxia was smiling. You said you wanted to protect Everlasting Snow Palace. In the process of protecting it, shedding blood is inevitable. As you know, if we annihilate the Hanbing sect, the 3 concubines will have to be dealt with as well. Even Unhi? I don't intend to kill the 4th brother. After all, you loved him as much as you loved me, despite how useless he is. But if he crosses the line, even I won't be able to hold back. Unwi paused for a moment before continuing in a steady tone. I already warned him. If he crosses the line again, I will cripple one limb at a time, and in the end I will shatter his danshan. I heard you already broke one of his limbs. Are you really planning to do it? They say a man's word is worth 1,000 gold. I keep my promises. Xianxia quietly observed Unwi. They say there's no finger you can bite that won't hurt. The same applied to Xianxia. It's a difficult matter. Yes, I don't intend to stubbornly insist on my position. If you order me not to, I won't do it. But if I do that, wouldn't it be as if I were disregarding your judgment? I can handle it. The two continued to play in silence. Unwi's white stones seemed to have already gained the upper hand. Every move he made appeared to be moving the heavens and earth. As I keep playing, I feel like I can finally see the picture you're trying to paint. Xianxia let out a sigh. When the time comes to annihilate the Hanbing sect, inform me first. Yes, I will. As for the 3 concubines and Unhi, leave them to me. Understood. Don't worry, your words will be honored. Unwi smiled slightly. Of course, he didn't plan to annihilate the Hanbing sect immediately. He had already given them a warning and placed them under control. No matter how stupid Jin Yang was, he wasn't so blind that he wouldn't understand what to do next. At the very least, he had that much sense. Otherwise, he wouldn't have grown the Hanbing sect to such a level. Xianxia knew this too, but as the leader of a faction, he had to prepare for any contingency. What if they had to take down the Hanbing sect right away? Unwi had presented one alternative. It was difficult. Xianxia had to ask. But there's one thing that bothers me. Viper Valley, I can't shake off the suspicion. We still haven't found a way to neutralize Slash and OVELIGHT, Slash their ice venom corrosion poison. If we bring them inside under these conditions, it could become a fatal blow to us. Just like this stone here. Xianxia's Go skills were, as previously mentioned, the best in Everlasting Snow Mountain. Even if he lost to Unwi once, his skills had not diminished. Among Unwi's seemingly dominant white stones, Xianxia managed to wedge a single black stone into the formation. With a soft click, the stone disrupted Unwi's entire board. Xianxia had sacrificed multiple territories just to place that single stone. It was a meticulously calculated move. Father! Unwi's voice didn't waver, as if he had anticipated this move, as if he had been waiting for it. There are times in Go when you must play an unexpected move. His white stone landed in the center of the board. Xianxia was left speechless. It was a move he hadn't seen coming. The stone he had poured his efforts into had been completely neutralized. That spot was perfect. Xiao Yongchen's mind raced. 3 moves, no 4, no 5. In exactly 5 moves he would lose. A move may appear to be fatal, but there's always a way to dismantle it, just like this stone I just placed. Ha! As you can see, this is the picture I am painting. Sometimes, what looks like a risky move is actually the path to victory. Xiao Yongchen stared at that single stone for a long time. It felt as if the picture Unwi was drawing was finally coming into view. Unwi spoke in a calm, firm voice. The world changes with every passing moment. Even a move that was previously unseen can, when combined with other moves, create a new strategy that can dismantle the enemy's board. Xiao Yongchen lifted his gaze from the Go board. Unwi was smiling. If you're by my side, father, there will be nothing in this world to fear. That smile was so bright. You're the strongest in everlasting snow mountain, aren't you? No one knows that. Are you planning to remain a shadow? If I'm a shadow, then what's there to fear? You'll be by my side, father. Ha, a laugh escaped Xiao Yongchen's lips. Now shall we create that ultimate martial art together? Yes, let's create a martial art that will shake the heavens and earth. Chapter 2, Xianxia muttered under his breath. It's taking a long time. It had already been 5 whole hours since Unwi had entered the main palace. During that time, Xianxia and Han Murin had been torturing Cho Sehui in the courtyard behind the martial training hall. Cho Sehui had screamed at the top of his lungs, begging for his life, but not a single sound had escaped outside. Xianxia had maintained a sound barrier the entire time. Standing there with his arms crossed, Xianxia watched Han Murin with a look of disapproval. Noticing that stare, Han Murin turned to look at him, and Xianxia spoke as if he had been waiting for that moment. Joint dislocation art is a technique that involves twisting the joints meticulously to inflict pain. The key is to avoid breaking bones while inducing extreme agony. But look at those shattered limb bones. You're just targeting the bones for no reason, aren't you? I apologize. With your level of inner strength, you should be able to precisely control the bones, flesh, and joints. You claim to have reached the root heaven stage, so you should have at least some understanding of controlling internal power. But from what I see now, it's utterly pathetic. It might have sounded personal, but it wasn't. Xianxia was being strictly objective. Unwi had already decided. He had accepted Han Murin as one of his own. What more was there to say? If Unwi declared he was going to flip the entire country upside down, Xianxia would gladly join him in the endeavor. It might sound inappropriate, but Xianxia cherished Unwi almost as if he were his own son. Unwi had once said to him, "Even if you stab me in the back one day, it's fine." If Xianxia makes that choice, he must have had a good reason. Those were words based on absolute trust, and Unwi genuinely meant them. Xianxia felt the same. If Unwi accepted someone who harbored a grudge against the palace of demon flames of chaos, a direct bloodline of the former deputy leader who had been purged in a coup, then Xianxia had only one duty: to thoroughly train him. Han Murin understood that as well. At first he thought Xianxia just didn't like him. The man had been nitpicking everything. But now he understood it wasn't personal. Han Murin respectfully clasped his fists and bowed. "I apologize. My understanding is still lacking, and I haven't been able to fully grasp Protector Xiang's teachings. I will try harder, so please continue to instruct me." "Well, your attitude is certainly commendable." Xianxia remembered the nights when Han Murin would train endlessly, night after night. One thing was for sure: Han Murin was brutally honest with himself. If he found a flaw, he'd work tirelessly through the night to fix it, and he was quick to catch on. Back at the Hanbing sect, when Unwi had caused that commotion, Han Murin had addressed him as Lord Hyun Xiaolin, and now he was calling Xianxia Protector Xiang. At the very least, this one wouldn't starve to death in the streets. "All right, now for the third technique." Xianxia was about to teach him the third technique of the 10,000 agonies art when he abruptly fell silent. His expression darkened, and it wasn't for just any reason. "Xianxia." A voice pierced through the sound barrier as if it were nothing but a thin sheet of paper. The voice belonged to someone he would have preferred to never hear again, someone he never thought he'd encounter here. "No," Unwi said he would handle this. Xianxia's heart plummeted. "You ignore the rules of the White Snow Phantom Corps, and now you're ignoring the orders of the captain as well." Xianxia swallowed dryly. He spun around, ready to bow toward the western sky about 20 meters away. But before he could even ask when he was supposed to go. "Come to the storage shed behind the training hall. The voice was already giving orders. Right now, damn it. Looks like today's the day I die. Xianxia trudged forward. Honestly, he could have arrived much faster, but he didn't. There's a saying that a cow being led to the slaughterhouse walks slower because it's too busy thinking. Right now, Xianxia was that cow. He scratched his head furiously.